Hey guys, welcome back to Star Recaps. Today I am going to explain Prison Break Season 1, 2, and 3 combined. Enjoy watching. At the starting of the series, Michael Schofield gets his whole body tattooed before he attempts to rob a bank. He acts almost as if he is waiting for the police to arrive. When he is taken to court, he pleads guilty and waits to be taken to the prison where he is going to serve 5 years. After meeting his inmate Sucre, Michael sees his brother Lincoln in another compartment. Lincoln has been sentenced to death because he killed the vice president's brother. A flashback shows us the last conversation Michael had with his brother, who told him that he is innocent. Michael also meets Dr. Sarah to receive his insulin shots because he is a diabetic. During his first days in prison, Michael gets to work and plants several origamis around. That evening, Michael goes to the church to meet with his brother, who is surprised to see him in prison. Schofield tells him that he came here to break him out. In the meantime, hints of a plot by the Secret Service are given to the viewers, implying that they are connected to Lincoln's sentence. Schofield introduces himself to John Abruzzi because he needs a card from him to join the ranks of the employed inmates. John's people on the outside receive a picture of Fibonacci, the man who betrayed Abruzzi and sent him to prison. Abruzzi's men jump on Schofield because John is impatient to learn where Fibonacci is located. Schofield will be sent to solitary confinement after this incident, but he cracks a deal with Warden Pope to build his Taj Mahal replica, which he is preparing as a gift to his wife. Schofield is a structural engineer. The next day, Schofield meets C-Note and asks him to get a drug that acts as an insulin blocker, implying that he is not really a diabetic. Eventually, Abruzzi gives Schofield a card to join the rest of the inmate employees. This gives Schofield the chance to spend more time with his brother and talk about his plan. Schofield reveals that he worked in this prison as an engineer when it was built. Lincoln wonders if Michael has seen the blueprints of the prison, but Schofield has more than that. He has tattooed the blueprints on his body. Schofield plays a game of chess with an old man named Cooper, who is believed to have parachuted out of a plane with $1.5 million. Schofield knows that he is going to need money on the outside, so he thinks about using this man's stash. As a part of his plan, Schofield needs an Allen bolt and tries to unscrew one from a bench. The problem is that this bench belongs to T-Bag, a ruthless criminal with a large following of white criminals in prison. T-Bag offers to protect Schofield if the latter becomes his boyfriend, but Michael refuses the proposal. As a consequence, T-Bag takes the Allen bolt from him and threatens Schofield to keep his eyes open. Meanwhile, Lincoln's old love interest and lawyer, Veronica, gets a videotape that depicts Lincoln pulling the trigger on the vice president's brother. When they meet later on, Lincoln promises to her that he did not do it. He approached the car with a gun in his hand, but the man was already dead when Lincoln saw him. He was also told that the guy he was supposed to kill was just a low-life thug. Later, a battle starts within the prison as the white inmates have a rivalry with the black inmates. T-Bag's boyfriend attacks Schofield because he is jealous of him, but Michael steals the bolt from him. Another inmate kills T-Bag's boyfriend, who dies in Michael's arms. T-Bag sees this image and assumes that Schofield killed the young man, promising that he is going to retaliate. In the meantime, Veronica is being watched by Agent Kellerman of the Secret Service because she is trying to learn more about the night when Lincoln supposedly performed the hit. Back in the prison, Sarah runs a test on Schofield because she suspects he is not a diabetic. Thankfully, C-Note has brought him the drug Schofield asked just in time, so the test shows he is a diabetic. Schofield can keep returning to the infirmary for insulin shots since this area is critical to his plan. As soon as he leaves the infirmary, Abruzzi grabs Schofield and requires to know Fibonacci's location. Even though Abruzzi tortures him, Schofield will only give him Fibonacci's location once they are outside the walls of this prison. After losing a couple of fingers, Sarah takes care of Schofield in the infirmary. Lincoln gives Michael his word that he will teach Abruzzi a lesson, but Schofield asks him to stand down because Abruzzi is a part of his plan. Then Schofield reveals that Sucre is also part of his plan. Lincoln prompts him not to trust Sucre because he is a thief, but Schofield has no other choice. He knew before he came here that he had to recruit his cellmate, even though he had no idea who his cellmate would be. Without his cellmate being in the escape, he can't start digging the cell. Schofield needs to test Sucre, so he hides a phone while Sucre sees him. Lincoln tells guard Bellick about the phone, saying that Sucre has one. Bellick presses Sucre to learn about the phone, but the inmate remains silent. Knowing that he can trust him, Schofield reveals the escape plan to Sucre. On the other hand, Sucre is going to be released in 16 months and return to his fiancée, so he doesn't want to risk everything in an attempt to escape. To protect himself, Sucre asks to get transferred to another cell. In the meantime, Kellerman introduces himself to Veronica, saying that he will assist her if she finds any clues that can shed light on Lincoln's innocence. Later, Teabag waits to find Schofield in a vulnerable position so he can attack him, but Abruzzi intervenes because he has decided to change his approach. After beating up Teabag, he tells Schofield that he wants to work with him. Schofield lets him know that he will need Abruzzi to find a plane for them when they are out. He also reassures Abruzzi that they will be out before Fibonacci testifies against him, which will happen in a month. Soon, Bellick introduces Michael to his new cellmate straight from the psychiatric ward, a man named Potoshik. Schofield's plan has already fallen 3 days behind. He considers recruiting Potoshik, but a guy like him can't be trusted. Therefore, Schofield decides to start digging during the night. Nonetheless, this solution is not going to work, since Potoshik suffers from a neurological condition, which does not allow him to sleep at all. Schofield tries to work on opening a hole behind his cell's toilet when Potoshik is absent, but there is not merely enough time to make real progress. In addition to that, Potoshik starts becoming obsessed with Michael's tattoos because he sees a pattern in them. Michael asks the warden to get Potoshik transferred, but Pope can't do anything about it if there is not an important reason to make that request. Meanwhile, Sucre's fiancée has started dating his cousin and tells him over the phone that she can't wait for him anymore. Outside the prison, Veronica asks for help from the Project Justice organization, but they tell her they have already reviewed Lincoln's case and they are not going to do it again if she does not bring them any new evidence. However, one of the lawyers from Project Justice, Nick, meets Veronica later that day to tell her that he is going to help her out, even though his boss is not going to get involved. Back inside the prison, Schofield realizes that he has to deal with Potoshik as soon as possible. The crazy guy has started drawing Michael's tattoos on paper. After asking Abruzzi for some chemicals, the man brings them to him. He also brings a knife for Schofield, asking him to deal with Potoshik. Sucre finds Schofield in the yard to tell him that he wants back in the plan. When Schofield returns to his cell, he bangs his head on the metal bars to fake an attack from Potoshik. Potoshik is taken away and Sucre is brought back to the cell. While the two of them get to work, Michael explains that the infirmary is the weak link to the prison's security system, so that's why he visits it so often to do his thing. Meanwhile, Agent Kellerman and his partner Agent Hale find out that Schofield is Lincoln's brother. Too many people are trying to help Lincoln, so they should do something about it. Their play is to file for a transfer request to get Schofield in another prison. The Secret Service asks Pope to carry on with Schofield's transfer, but the warden is not going to do it. To change his mind, the agents hand him a file that tells the story of his illegitimate son, threatening that they will tell his wife everything if he doesn't do what they asked of him. Pope visits Schofield in his cell to ask what's going on with him, and Michael lets him know that he is Lincoln's brother, asking for 3 weeks of time. The warden can't do anything about it and tells Schofield that he is going to be transferred tomorrow. Michael talks with Cooper to ask for advice. The man tells him to write a petition. No matter what the result will be, the court is obligated to look into it, and that will block his transfer for 30 days. Michael writes the petition and then does some laundry with Sucre to block the view in their cell. Schofield walks right through the hole they have opened behind their bathroom to roam the corridors. Michael wants to find out which route they should take after they break out. He has to reach a decision between 3 separate streets. Outside the prison, Nick and Veronica suspect that the tape showing Lincoln performing the hit is made up. Nick takes the tape to a tech guy he knows. The tech guy makes a discovery while examining the sound of the tape. He believes that the sound of the gunshot has been recorded in another room, not in the parking lot depicted in the tape. Veronica asks him if he would testify that in court, but the tech guy would only do so if they brought him the original tape, since this one is just a copy. Later, the two lawyers find out that the room containing the original tape has been flooded, and the evidence is destroyed. Meanwhile, Kellerman asks Pope to destroy Michael's petition. Although Pope destroys it, he considers the possibility of telling his wife the truth. Back inside the prison, Michael fakes a breakout and watches as 2 of the streets he has in mind flood with police cars while the other one remains clean. Although it seems like a big misunderstanding, Michael is causing lots of trouble around, which makes Bellick dislike him. The next morning, Schofield is about to get transferred, but Pope changes his mind and keeps him in prison because he filed a motion. Then, Pope goes to his wife to tell her the truth about his past. The Secret Service agents speak with their boss, who tells them to find a way to kill Lincoln before his death sentence. Over the following days, Schofield keeps working on the escape plan, but he is back on schedule because the guards keep checking the cells. The only solution around this is to cause a lockdown. That would give him all the time in the world. Sucre suggests that to cause a lockdown, they have to make the inmates riot. A good way to do that is to get to the AC system and turn up the heat. Literally. The inmates start complaining, but Michael's plan backfires on him. Some of the inmates return to their cells peacefully after a confrontation with the guards, but some others follow Teabag in a riot. Schofield gets back to work, but his brother is trapped between two groups of inmates, trying to protect a rookie guard who was supposed to take him back to his cell. All the while, an inmate has received an order from the Secret Service to kill Lincoln. Meanwhile, the prisoners in the infirmary hear about the riot, and they start their own little riot, forcing Sarah to try to defend herself in her small office. At the same time, Lincoln is outnumbered by Teabag and his followers. Although he is really strong, he is knocked out, and Teabag grabs the guard. By a total accident, Teabag finds Schofield's hole in his cell, but the guard sees it as well. Teabag wants to be a part of the team, but they also have to find a solution about the guard. Teabag wants to kill him, but Schofield keeps everybody from doing so. Then, Schofield realizes that Sarah is in trouble, so he runs to the infirmary to help her out. Elsewhere, a huge inmate named Turk lures Lincoln underground, supposedly to take him to Michael. Turk lures Lincoln underground and surprises him with an attack. Turk tries to choke him with a thin cord. Both of them are heavy and full of muscles, moving like tanks. Lincoln bangs Turk on a wall and manages to get free. In Schofield's cell, Teabag bullies the guard. Meanwhile, Veronica and Nick have discovered that the phone call for Lincoln the night of the murder was made from Washington, while the murder took place in Chicago. This leads them to travel to Washington looking for answers. Governor Tancredi storms to the prison yard, asking Pope to take action. As it is revealed, Sarah is his daughter. Things get crazier in the infirmary, but Schofield arrives right on time to pull Sarah out of there. Sarah is scared, but Michael assures her that these corridors lead outside. He is not going to hurt her, but rather take her to safety. Turk lurks in the shadows and attacks Lincoln again. Burroughs tries to learn more information as Turk attacks him with a metal pipe. Lincoln pushes Turk to his death while asking him who sent him. Turk doesn't give out any information before he dies. In the meantime, Sucre and Abruzzi keep digging a dangerous wall. They have to follow Michael's instructions perfectly to avoid hitting a pipe, which can cause an explosion. A group of prisoners tries to follow Michael and Sarah, but the former protects her when they are attacked. Another prisoner tries to help his mate, but Sarah breaks his knee with a precise kick. This buys herself and Michael some time to run away. Soon, Michael takes Sarah to safety as a few sharpshooters open fire toward the inmates following her. Michael drops to the floor and drags himself away from the bullets. In Washington, Nick and Veronica find the phone booth that was used to make the phone call on the night of the murder. The phone in the booth rings, and a voice tells them that they are as good as dead. Finally, the police forces are about to enter the prison to reclaim control of it. Michael instructs everyone to let the guard go, but Teabag doesn't think that's a good idea and kills him before the police squad gets inside. Right outside the prison, Sarah realizes that Schofield knows too much about the prison's layout, which is not normal. Veronica and Nick return to her apartment with a bunch of files. A neighbor helps them carry the packages, but he dies in an explosion as soon as he opens Veronica's apartment door. Schofield's plan requires him to dig a hole into the guards' room, but nobody is allowed there except for Cooper, who is trusted by the guards. Michael approaches him trying to recruit him, but Cooper insists he is not the man Schofield thinks he is. If he is relying on his supposedly $1.5 million, he is making a mistake. Outside, Nick tells Veronica that they should not contact anyone because if the people who are after them think they are dead, they can use that liberty to continue their research uninterrupted. Schofield finds Cooper's cat, which was lost during the riot, but the latter still refuses to do him a favor and start a fire in the guards' room. Elsewhere, the Secret Service agents create yet another plot, killing LJ's mother and stepfather. Then they casually frame the boy for it. Later, Bellick asks Cooper who killed the guard, but the inmate doesn't want to become a snitch because that would cause issues for him. Bellick kills his cat to punish, and this leads Cooper to help Schofield by starting a fire in the guards' room. This is exactly what Schofield needs, because Abruzzi's crew will be invited to fix the damages. Meanwhile, Teabag frames one of his friends for the guard's death to get Bellick off their backs. Then, he keeps threatening the group that he will expose their plan, so they are forced to accept him as a part of their team. The crew starts digging in the guards' room when they are taken there to renovate it. By the end of this episode, it is also revealed that the Secret Service agents are working for Madam Vice President herself. Over the next couple of days, the young man who is kept by Teabag as a plaything asks Michael for help. Schofield does not want to get involved. The crew keeps digging in the guards' room. Little by little, they have to get rid of the debris produced on the ground. They put it in their pockets and empty it in the yard. One day, Schofield feels bad when he sees the young man who asked him for help committing the unthinkable. Bellick approaches Abruzzi to tell him that he has not received his monthly payment. He threatens that if he does not get paid, Abruzzi will lose all of his privileges. Abruzzi communicates with the Italian Mafia on the outside, but it seems to him like they are trying to cut him off because he is not giving them Fibonacci's location. Later, the Italian Mafia puts a new guy in charge, Lorelli. Abruzzi has a hard time accepting that and attacks his former subordinate, but the rest of the group holds him back because there is a new hierarchy now. Outside the prison, Nick with Veronica speak to Stedman's wife, the vice president's brother. The woman tells them that Stedman was going to be prosecuted for a potential scam, so many of his associates were going to lose money. To make sure that they would not, any of them could have killed him. Teabag harasses a new inmate named David, but the young man tells him that he doesn't want anything to do with him. Teabag won't get off David's back, and Michael sees this. He believes that this time he has to do something about it. In the meantime, LJ communicates with Veronica, who suspects that Kellerman is tracking his phone. Following her instructions, LJ loses the agents and finds Veronica along with Nick. The next time the crew gets together, Michael hits Teabag's knee and clarifies that he is the one who sets the rules, ordering him to let David alone. Then, the crew stumbles on some bad news since Bellick has not received his payment from Abruzzi, and he is not going to give John more time. Abruzzi's crew is removed from the guards room, and Lorelli's crew is assigned to do the job. The crew has to get back into that room, so Abruzzi asks Schofield to give Fibonacci to his boss Falzone. If they don't, the other crew will discover the hole. Schofield thinks about it because Fibonacci is just a guy who happened to be in the wrong time and place. He was working for the Mafia, but he had no idea until he saw John killing 2 men. Meanwhile, C-Note suspects that something is off with Schofield and asks Lorelli to work with his crew. Since Lorelli does not need anyone, C-Note offers to pay him $100 per month. Schofield asks Abruzzi to call Falzone and invite him for a meeting in the prison. Falzone agrees, but John knows he is a dead man if Schofield messes this up. C-Note starts working with the crew and discovers the hole in the floor. Elsewhere, a man named Quinn has been sent by the vice president to take matters into his own hands. Quinn asks the agents to step aside as he goes after the lawyers and LJ. Back in the prison, Falzone comes to meet John and Schofield. Schofield outlines how he found Fibonacci, and then Falzone asks to get his address. Schofield asks for some money in exchange, but Abruzzi shows him a picture of Veronica, threatening to kill her if Michael does not give them the address. Schofield has to protect Veronica, so he gives Falzone Fibonacci's address. Falzone reinstates Abruzzi as the top dog of the Mafia inside this prison, and the latter asks him to fix the issue with Bellick's money. Falzone gathers a team to go after Fibonacci, but Michael has sent him right into a trap. Abruzzi confronts Schofield about it, but it is revealed that the two of them have been working together on this one. Meanwhile, Quinn kills Veronica's ex-boyfriend and uses his computer to send her an encrypted message. Veronica replies to it, and that's all Quinn needs to track her location. Abruzzi's crew returns to the guards room to keep working on the hole. Schofield announces that they will be out of here by Friday before C-Note crashes the party. He has discovered the hole and wants to be part of the team. Schofield has no other choice but to get him on board. The next day, Schofield has a visit from his wife Nika, who brings him a credit card. During the night, Schofield uses the card to open a few doors to get to the room where his belongings are kept. He opens the box with his stuff to look for his watch, but he realizes it has been stolen. Near the woods, Quinn pretends he has been injured to convince Veronica and the rest to let him in. Once he is inside with them, he shoots Nick and ties the others up. He uses Nick as leverage because he is bleeding out. He wants to know what clues they have in their possession. In the morning, Schofield finds the guard who stole the watch from him. This watch is a part of Michael's plan, which means that he has to take it back. To do that, Michael asks David for help because stealing stuff is his trade. In exchange, he will think about putting him on the working crew. David gets to work and fakes a seizure to be able to approach the guard. When Michael sees him in the infirmary, the guard is missing the watch from his wrist. Pope calls Cooper to tell him that his daughter is sick, but the state is refusing to allow him to go see her. Cooper goes to Schofield to give him the watch and tells him that he wants to escape with the rest of the group. He also offers Schofield the money he has hidden from the robbery he performed so many years ago. Schofield uses the watch and a cell phone to create a recording device. He plants it near the infirmary area because he needs to figure out the shift switches of the guards. At the same time, Veronica and LJ escape. On top of that, they manage to trap Quinn into a well. That same night, Bellick finds Nika and pressures her to tell him more information about Schofield. Nika tries to avoid his questions, but eventually reveals that she brought Michael a credit card. While everything else is happening, Schofield gradually grows closer to Sarah. They enjoy the short meetings they have. Outside the prison, Quinn calls Kellerman for help, but the latter just makes sure that Quinn is never going to escape. Schofield takes the recorder back and makes his calculations, estimating that they have 18 minutes in total to escape. When he meets with Lincoln, he tells him that there is not enough time for all of them to escape. One of them has to be left behind. C-Note overhears Schofield speaking with Lincoln about the extra member of the crew. When he lets the others know that one of them should be left behind, everybody starts thinking about Teabag. However, Teabag smells the conspiracy and announces that he has told his cousin about their escape. If he does not hear from him 5 minutes before the escape and 20 minutes after, later, he will call the guards to tell them everything. The Mafia finds the cousin and Abruzzi sends a man to abduct him. The plan is to keep him alive until they escape and then release him, but things go sideways. Abruzzi's guy kills Teabag's cousin along with his son when he pulls a gun. The murder of the kid makes Abruzzi feel guilty. Some kind of mold starts forming in his cell, which makes Abruzzi question his eyes, considering that he is seeing the image of Jesus. When he talks to the priest of the prison, he is convinced that God appears to people in moments when they need forgiveness the most. In the meantime, Bellick learns about the watch from guard Geary. He takes David aside for a talk until he convinces him to spy on Schofield and report to him what Michael is doing. Hale has started regretting everything he has done and calls Veronica to ask her for a meeting because he wants to give her information that can prove Lincoln's innocence. Abruzzi corners Teabag to force him to back out of the escape, but the latter spits a razor out of his mouth and attacks Abruzzi with it. Schofield navigates the corridors while the crew completes the hole in the guard's room. Geary comes to check on them and Lincoln is forced to attack him in order to stall him. When Michael emerges from the hole, he declares that they are leaving tonight. Despite their progress, getting Lincoln is going to be a problem. Abruzzi is transferred to a hospital by helicopter so he can receive better medical care. Lincoln is beaten up by the guards and taken back to solitary confinement. Michael asks to see his brother, but that's a request the warden can't grant. He tells Schofield that he can only see his brother in his execution, which is going to take place in 36 hours. Schofield tells the crew that the escape is off until they get Lincoln, but the rest of the members want to escape tonight with or without Lincoln and Schofield. Michael doesn't give up easily. He uses a razor blade to extract a pill he has been hiding inside his bicep. Then, he speaks to the priest and asks him to deliver a cross to Lincoln since it will mean a lot coming from him. The priest delivers the cross, and Lincoln finds the pill along with a message in it. The message says, "Eat 810." When they get to the guard's room, Schofield causes a minor flood to trick Bellick into forcing them to stay in the room to clean the mess. Veronica visits Lincoln to tell him that Nick is working on some new findings they have. Most probably they are going to achieve a postponement of the execution. When the time comes, Lincoln eats the pill and starts shaking uncontrollably. As a consequence, he is taken to the infirmary. As soon as the time hits 9 o'clock, the team gets moving. Meanwhile, Veronica meets with Hale, who tells her that nobody killed Stedman since he is still alive. Kellerman interrupts them and kills Hale before he can give Veronica a file with the list of the names involved in Lincoln's conspiracy. Back inside the prison, Michael takes the group of escapees under the infirmary so they can break out and take Lincoln along on the way. Unfortunately, the maintenance has replaced a tube that Schofield had opened a hole to, and the plan can't be carried out. Teabag is angry at Michael and pulls a knife to attack him, but a guard walks by and they have to stop. When they get the chance, they leave the room to return to their cells as if nothing happened. Schofield asks Sarah to talk to her father, the governor, about Lincoln, but she is not going to do it because her father never listens to her. At the same time, Nick and Veronica are fighting to get a court appeal because, as she claims, she has a secret informant who told her that Stedman is not dead. If that's the case, Stedman's body should not be really buried in his coffin. By talking to Cooper, Schofield hears the story of an older inmate who was sentenced to death. The chair didn't work, so he was forced to go through the mental and emotional process of it again 3 weeks later when the chair got fixed. Schofield considers that he can save Lincoln by breaking the chair. He goes into the corridors once more and is lucky enough to see a mouse. He grabs the mouse and then releases it to the room with the chair, hoping that the mouse will cause a discontinuation of the electricity current somehow. The problem is, David has heard Michael talking about the chair and he spits it to Bellick. The guard checks on the chair, but it's not working. While trying to figure out what's wrong, he finds out that a mouse has been roasted inside the electricity board. All they have to do to get the chair working again is to change a fuse. In the meantime, Veronica and Nick get a hearing, but they have no tangible proof to present. Veronica talks about Kellerman and Hale, but the vice president's lawyer hands everybody a note from the Secret Service stating that the service does not have any agents with those names. Lincoln's lawyers lose the appeal. Lincoln is taken to the final visitation space with Michael, while Sarah visits the lawyers and then her father to present him with some clues. Nonetheless, this is not enough. When Lincoln is taken near the chair, the governor calls Pope to tell him that he is not granting Lincoln a favor. With that, everything seems lost for Lincoln. Moments before Lincoln is executed, he spots a man in the crowd and tries to tell Michael about him. Pope receives a phone call which forces him to stop the execution. Then he explains to everyone that Judge Kessler called him to ask him to stop. Veronica leaves to go meet the judge, while Lincoln tells Michael that he saw their father within the crowd. Judge Kessler informs Veronica that he received a document showing a discrepancy in the coroner's reports. He will delay Lincoln's execution for 2 weeks. He has also ordered Stedman's body to be dug out so a new coroner can run new tests on it. Schofield starts working on finding a new path to their freedom. He concludes that they have to pass through the psychiatric ward. Schofield needs to spend some time exploring the new path so he can familiarize himself with it. Sucre helps him out by getting him a guard's uniform from his cousin who works in the laundry. Cooper spends some time speaking with C-Note, revealing a new secret. C-Note has kept his family in the dark, not letting them know that he is imprisoned. He fixes things so his family receives postal cards from him to assume that he is a soldier in Iraq. Schofield uses the guard uniform to browse around in the psychiatric ward, finding what he's been looking for. In the meantime, the coroner examines Stedman's supposed body and concludes that this is really Stedman. On his way back, Schofield has to hide from a guard and burns his body on a hot tube. Michael reaches his cell but passes out. He wakes up in the infirmary the next morning while Bellick assumes that Sucre burnt Schofield. Meanwhile, Kellerman starts working with some agents from an organization called The Company, where Vice President Reynolds also belongs. By reviewing footage from the cameras, they realize that Lincoln's father was the one who slipped the envelope with the reports under Judge Kessler's door. Back in Schofield's cell, he checks on his burn mark only to find out that a part of the blueprint on his back is gone. The story takes us 3 years in the past to show us how the brothers used to live. Michael was doing good in his life. After he graduated, he got a good job and managed to buy a house. On the other hand, Lincoln was living the life of a thug. Schofield was even looking down on his brother, being tired of playing the older brother to his older brother. One day, Lincoln returned to his house only to find Crab and another man waiting for him. Lincoln owed Crab $90,000, but his debt was paid by this other man. However, he didn't do this out of his good heart. He asked Lincoln to go kill Stedman. Lincoln was confused and called Schofield for guidance, but Michael did not reply. Lincoln arrived at the scene with a pistol in his hands, but the person in the car was already dead. Lincoln got arrested and Schofield blamed him for his actions. Their father disappeared and their mother died, but Michael handled things in a better way. Their mother also left them with some money from her life insurance. Schofield used the money well while Lincoln did not. However, Veronica reveals to Michael that their mother left them no money because she did not have life insurance. Lincoln borrowed the money to give it to Schofield, making it look like it did not come from him. These developments lead Michael to decide to go to prison to save his brother. As for the other characters, Sarah was a drug addict. She met Bellick in a support group, and he invited her to work in the prison. Sucre was arrested during a robbery because he needed money to buy a ring for his fiancée. C-Note was serving in the military, but was dishonorably discharged when he reported some illegal torture. T-Bag was in love with a woman who had 2 children, but the woman reported him to the authorities when she realized that he was a fugitive. Finally, Reynolds has a talk with a man who has his back turned, but he is revealed to be Stedman. Back in the present day, the crew now has a new problem to deal with since Bellick puts David on the team. He wants David near Schofield as much as possible so he can undermine his plans. Outside the prison, Veronica's group goes back to the well to find Quinn's dead body. They lower LJ down to steal his phone, but the boy also sees 2 names carved on the wall, Kellerman and Krivecki. Meanwhile, Sarah has recovered a piece of fabric from a guard's uniform from when she was treating Michael's burn. She hands it to Pope, and the warden asks Schofield about it. Since Schofield can't provide an answer, Pope throws him in solitary. Schofield tries to remember the part of his tattoo that's missing, but he can't. This makes him mad, and he starts punching the wall. In the meantime, Bellick will bring a professional crew to work in the guards room, so the group of inmates has to find a solution to cover the hole in the floor. Since only Sucre's cell has access to the corridors, he is the one who is going to do it during the night. Unfortunately, Sucre has to run through the yard, and he gets caught. He has taken some precautions, though, and comes up with a story, saying that he waited for something to be dropped for him over the wall. Supposedly, it's just some underwear that belongs to his girlfriend. Bellick buys it, but still takes Sucre to solitary. While Sarah is called by a guard to check on Schofield, David tells Bellick that the crew is up to something. He is not certain what the fuss is about, but it has something to do with the floor. Bellick proceeds to check it out, but Sucre has done his job well. The cement has dried and the floor looks good. Outside the prison, LJ finds out that Kellerman's real name is Owen Krivecki. He invades his house intending to kill him, but the police come to the scene and arrest him. Back inside the prison, Michael is taken to the psychiatric yard since he has convinced everyone that he is experiencing a mental episode. However, Michael is well. He approaches Potoshik to tell him that he was right about his tattoos. In fact, Michael wants him to remember his tattoos and draw them for him. Schofield realizes that the medicine makes Potoshik forget. In the meantime, Guard Geary tries to sell Schofield's cell to the highest bidder since it is in a good spot. Teabag informs the crew about it, and C-Note tells Geary that he will buy the room for $500. Kellerman is dismissed by the Secret Service and the company because he has been compromised. C-Note asks his boys inside the prison to get him the money, but instead, he receives a beating. The blacks don't like the fact that C-Note is hanging out with Teabag and the rest of the whites. Potoshik starts remembering Schofield gradually after he is convinced to stop taking his medication. Michael sees Sanchez and asks him to deliver a message to his cousin Sucre, telling him that he is trying to fill in the blanks. Soon, Potoshik remembers too much and jumps on Schofield because he screwed him back in their cell. Schofield has to outline the plan for him before Potoshik destroys the drawing he has made with the missing tattoo. Schofield sets up Potoshik again and asks to meet Sarah so he can get out of there. Teabag and C-Note participate in a game of poker to make some money to buy the cell, but Geary just takes their money without giving them the cell. Sanchez now knows too much, and Sucre with Lincoln decide to tell him about the plan. Schofield comes up with a double solution to their problems. He asks to speak to Pope and tells him that Geary extorted him for money. Since he could not make the payment, Geary burnt him. Pope checks on Geary's locker and finds a lot of money in it. Geary is fired and leaves the prison. At the same time, Lincoln is transferred outside the prison because he has been allowed to visit his son for an hour. While the van is en route, a large truck hits it and flips it over. Lincoln wakes up in a field with Kellerman standing on top of him. Kellerman tries to strangle him, but a man appears and knocks the agent out. Schofield reunites with his team to announce to them that he knows how they are going to escape. However, he needs the key to the infirmary, which is only possessed by the medical staff. At the same time, Abruzzi returns to the prison having survived Teabag's attack. Michael kisses Sarah in the infirmary, but he feels bad to steal the keys from her, so he just asks her to wait for him. Even though Sarah likes him, she can't be in a relationship with him because he is an inmate. Schofield asks David for help, but the young man will only assist him if Michael can get rid of his cellmate Avocado, who keeps harassing David. The mysterious man who saved Lincoln is revealed to be his father, Aldo. Aldo explains that he used to work for the company, a group of multinationals who call the shot behind the government. They basically control everything. Aldo left them and took some information with him, so they do everything they do to Lincoln in the hope that they will find Aldo. Meanwhile, Abruzzi is a changed man since he believes that Jesus saved him. He shakes hands with Teabag, asking him to leave the past behind. Despite his change of behavior, he still wants to escape with the rest of the group. Mika meets Sarah outside the prison to tell her that Michael is a good man. He married her so that she could get a green card and live in the country peacefully. However, the real reason for this meeting is so she can steal Sarah's keys and then visit Michael to give him the keys. Aldo reveals that the company faked Stedman's death to prevent a scandal, but the police and Kellerman find them. To protect his father and stay alive, Lincoln gives himself in. Michael makes a copy of the infirmary key, but Sarah understands the plot and asks to have the lock changed. Later, Abruzzi calls somebody and asks him to be ready. It is revealed that he is talking to Nick, who is watching over Veronica for Abruzzi. David is in serious trouble with Avocado, so Michael approaches him to give him a chance to get out of there. David reassures him that he can be trusted, but he tells Bellick everything about the escape once Michael lets him know. Bellick runs to the guard's room and discovers the hole on the floor. Cooper attacks Bellick to prevent him from exposing their operation. The old man has some fight left in him and knocks Bellick out even though he is severely injured. Once Cooper tells Michael about this, the latter declares that they are leaving tonight. Schofield gives everyone some tasks while also stressing that they need to cover their scents because the police dogs will be their main enemies after the escape. Then, Michael speaks to Sarah and tells her everything. The group will have to pass through here, so Michael asks Sarah to forget the door unlocked. Sarah leaves without giving him a clear answer. At the same time, Abruzzi calls Nick to tell him that he has to bring Veronica to the designated location tonight. Pope tries to transfer the Taj Mahal replica, but the roof collapses, so he asks for Michael to come in his office. Veronica is getting ready to fly to Montana to investigate some clues, but Nick pulls a gun on her. While everybody is preparing for the escape, a nurse walks out of the infirmary and closes the door behind her. Sarah is not working this evening. Meanwhile, Pope learns that Bellick is nowhere to be found. He starts looking everywhere for him, and even calls his wife, but nobody has seen Bellick since this morning. Then, Pope takes Michael into his office to tell him about the replica, and Schofield presents him with a piece that has been holding the roof. Michael pulls a knife and tells the warden that he is escaping. He threatens the warden that he will be forced to make arrangements so Lincoln can join them. Schofield asks Pope to order his men to transfer Lincoln to the infirmary and leave him there for the night. Pope tries to talk Michael out of this, but Schofield has made his decision. After Pope gives the order, Michael locks him in the office closet. When it's time, the prisoners pass through the hole one by one. Bellick almost frees himself and starts screaming for help, but the inmates reach him just in time to stop him. Meanwhile, the company gives up on Reynolds, who wants to run for president, because she seems to be losing in the polls. Their estimation is that she is not going to go down quietly, so they need to make a move on her ASAP. Sarah returns to the prison and opens the door for Schofield because she believes Lincoln is innocent. Michael sounds the fire alarm at the psychiatric ward so he can cause an evacuation of the ward. Schofield and his group use white uniforms to mingle with those inmates and get inside the psychiatric ward. Elsewhere, Nick changes his mind and lets Veronica go, even though the Mafia has his father. This will later lead to Nick and his father getting killed by the Mafia. The team finds Lincoln, but Pope's secretary also finds the Warden, who sounds the alarm immediately. On top of that, Potoshik has followed the group and wants to escape with them. Since he is threatening to notify the guards, the group will take him. The team uses a rope to get past the wall. Old Man Cooper succumbs to his serious wounds, but still tells Michael where he has hidden the money. Some of the other inmates also hear him revealing the location. Michael and Sanchez are the last ones to use the rope, but the weight is too much for the rope to hold. Sanchez falls due to his excessive weight, but Michael makes it. Bellick is freed, and Pope gathers his men to tell them that they should bring the convicts back in no matter what. He gives them the freedom to shoot if they have to. The escapees find a van placed there by Abruzzi's men. They play a little trick and leave Potoshik behind. Pope finds out that the door in the infirmary has not been breached, which can only mean that somebody left it open for the inmates. Inside the van, Abruzzi is about to kill Teabag, but the latter handcuffs himself to Schofield and swallows the key. Soon, the crew is forced to ditch the van and run on foot. Schofield forces David to leave the team since he betrayed their plan to Bellick. In the meantime, Reynolds refuses to go down without a fight, and she prepares a plot to kill the President of the United States. The team of escapees hides in a warehouse for a moment, but they have to do something about Teabag because he is slowing them down. After they jump on him, Sucre tries to cut the handcuffs, but it doesn't work. Abruzzi has had enough, so he grabs an axe and chops Teabag's hand off. The group flees while Teabag is left on the ground. Meanwhile, the president dies, and Reynolds swears as the new president. The company wants to renegotiate with her, but she has more power now. Pope sends his men to find Sarah, but she is in no condition to speak since she has overdosed. Veronica lands in Montana and enters a mansion. As she expected, she finds Stedman alive. The fugitives make a run for the airstrip, where Abruzzi's men are waiting with the plane. However, the police also arrive. The pilot of the plane knows that they are going to get caught, so he gets the engines running. The fugitives reach the airstrip, but they only see the plane leaving. While the police cars are arriving, everybody wonders what they should do not. There is only one thing they can do: run. At the start of the new season, FBI agent Alexander Mahon is tasked with apprehending the Fox River 8 escapees. The authorities are also pursuing the escapees. The group of escapees includes our main character, Michael Schofield, and his brother, Lincoln Burrows. Also, there are Fernando Sucre, Benjamin Franklin, and Abruzzi. Also, Theodore Bagwell, aka Teabag, was with them. But as he is a very bad person, the team cuts off his hand and leaves him alone. Then they steal a vehicle, and Michael directs them to a warehouse in Oswego. Meanwhile, the authorities get a lead on the escapees, but when they reach the location, they realize that they have raided the wrong location. On the other hand, Alexander Mahon searches Michael Schofield's apartment and uncovers evidence that shows Michael has been planning his escape for months. Acting on this discovery, Mahon orders a search of the adjacent river. He thinks that Michael must have something disposed of in that river, which can be potential evidence. After that, Mahon begins to unravel the truth behind Michael's intricate tattoo design. Elsewhere, Teabag still carries his cut hand in a box full of ice. He succeeds in finding a veterinary doctor and forces him to reconnect his severed hand. After that, he kills the doctor and leaves in the doctor's car in pursuit of other escapees, as he also knows what Michael is going after. The scene shifts to the wife of Lincoln, Veronica Donovan. She is inside the mansion with the former president. Soon she realizes that she cannot leave the mansion where she is being held, and that's why she calls the police for help. However, after some time, instead of the police, some suited men arrive there and brutally murder her. Then we see Sarah Tancredi, who regains consciousness. In the coming days, she receives a secret message from Michael. After decrypting the message, Sarah learns a little about Michael's next move, back to the escapees group. At the warehouse, they retrieve some shovels and begin digging in the ground. There, they unearth a stash Michael buried earlier before going to prison. It contains clothes and other items crucial to their planned disappearance. At the same time, Alexander Mahon is battling an addiction to a certain narcotic. Still, he continues to investigate Michael's plans. Driven by obsession, he vows to fully fully understand Michael's scheme and capture him once and for all. According to a statement by previously fired CO Geary, the authorities suspended Warden Pope for providing Michael Schofield with special privileges as he was constructing the Taj Mahal for Pope's wife. The authorities also terminated Bellick for selling some critical information, including some rights, to Abruzzi, who was also one of the escapees. After losing his job, Bellick comes home and learns that the government has placed a high bounty on the capture of each member of the Fox River 8 escapees. So now he plans to capture the escapees and get the bounty amount. On the other hand, the group decides to split up and go on their separate paths, but the brothers are still together. Lincoln Burrows convinces Michael Schofield to help rescue LJ, who is the son of Lincoln and currently under investigation by the authorities. He is also being falsely convicted for a crime which he has not done. The brothers use a vehicle that Michael had stashed in a garage. On their way, they stop to buy some supplies from a store, but there they are intercepted by the police. So they are forced to abandon the car and flee to save their lives. But the car was very important in their plan to disappear from the eyes of the authorities. After that, Lincoln calls LJ and gives him some instructions, as Lincoln is coming to save him. Unfortunately, Alexander Mahon is present there, and he understands something is wrong. So when Lincoln shows up from the roof of the elevator to save his son, Mahon disrupts the plan, and Lincoln has to retreat without his son. The brothers manage to escape, though Lincoln is shot in the process. Soon after, LJ is sent to Arizona for imprisonment. Meanwhile, Teabag sets off for Utah, where he knows that Westmoreland's money is hidden. Also an escapee, Tweener continues his petty thefts and agrees to accompany a girl who invites him to join her in Utah. Everyone is behind the money of Westmoreland. One morning, Bellick confronts Geary at a store, and after a fight, they agree to work together to collect the bounties on the escapees. First, they pressure an unsuccessful escapee, Seth Sanchez, into providing information, and then they start to chase Michael's girlfriend. In the meantime, the brothers arrive at a safe house where Lincoln receives medical treatment as the police shoot him. Then, Michael returns to retrieve their car, only to find that it is not present there. After some time of searching, he finds out the car is in a junkyard, but he discovers that their bag is missing from the car. Leaving everything behind them, the brothers continue their journey out of the city on a route indicated by Michael's tattoo. To mislead the authorities, they destroy the car, leaving 2 chunks of flesh behind. This ploy causes the police to believe that they are dead. However, Alexander Mahon remains suspicious and continues his relentless pursuit. He gives the names of some other convicts in the place of Michael and Lincoln, making the police continue searching the brothers. The brothers join the girlfriend of Michael, Volek, who is already being tracked by Bellick and Geary. Meanwhile, Sucre learns from a friend that his girlfriend, Maricruz Delgado, is planning to marry Hector in Las Vegas. Hearing this, Sucre becomes desperate. He borrows a friend's motorcycle and begins riding toward Vegas. Meanwhile, Sarah Tancredi is detained for her narcotics addiction. Soon, she enters a rehabilitation program on her father's recommendation. There, she meets a man named Kellerman Paul, who is actually using a false identity. He poses as a fellow recovering addict and begins gaining Sarah's trust. In reality, he is a Secret Service agent and working for the company now. In the meantime, Bellick and Geary ambush and capture Michael Schofield, Volek, and Lincoln Burrows. Now, they intend to claim Westmoreland's money rather than the bounty on the escapees. That's why they force Michael to drive them towards the location of the money. During the drive, Lincoln discreetly causes a tire to puncture. Geary takes the tire back to town for repairs, leaving Bellick to guard the trio. While performing a distraction, Volek steals Bellick's dagger during a staged lap dance and uses it to free herself and the brothers. Together, they lock Bellick in a cell and later capture Geary as well. Bellick, desperate to save himself, reveals Sarah's fragile condition. Here Volek, seeing an opportunity, decides to turn the brothers in for the bounty instead of pursuing Westmoreland's money. However, her plan fails because there's no bullet in the gun, and the brothers abandon her on the road. Meanwhile, Tweener grows closer to the girl he is traveling with towards Utah. He is still hiding his true identity from her. At the same time, Abruzzi learns the location of Fibonacci, the man who betrayed him. That's why he rushes to kill him. However, it turns out to be a trap orchestrated by Alexander Mahon. When confronted, Abruzzi refuses to surrender and is fatally shot after pulling out a revolver. Consequently, Mahon faces backlash for his handling of the situation in such a bad way. But he is also a man working for the company. That's why he gets out of any inquiry easily. Back at rehab, Paul and Sarah begin forming a bond. They start meeting at the home of Sarah, with Paul continuing to manipulate her. Also, the FBI discovers that both brothers are still alive. Meanwhile, Tweener's companion learns his true identity but, surprisingly, allows him to steal her car and flee. Obviously, she is also in love with him, but can't risk her own life for an escapee. That's why she lets him run from the motel room where they were staying. The brothers arrive in Utah, but no one there seems to know anything about the land they are searching for. Actually, the money was hidden there years ago, and now, due to the expansion of the city, the landmarks have changed, and no one knows the specific location where the money is hidden. So, they head to City Hall to retrieve the blueprints of the city, only to find that the specific page they need has already been removed. There, they spot Teabag, so they are convinced that Teabag must have got the blueprint already. Then they track down Teabag, who admits that he was too late to reach the City Hall, and that Tweener now has the blueprint. Tweener, meanwhile, is at a hardware store acquiring some digging equipment. A suspicious salesperson notices him, but before the situation escalates, the brothers arrive and confront Tweener. However, he confesses that Blueprint is actually in possession of Teabag, and he mislead the brothers so that he can have some time to memorize the contents of the blueprint and destroys it by eating it. Now the brothers have no choice but to rely on him for the maps. Elsewhere, Sucre rushes to the church where Maricruz Delgado is getting married. He confronts Hector and asks him to leave his girlfriend alone, but Hector has already called in the police, so Sucre punches him and flees the scene to avoid being arrested. Now leaving everything behind, Sucre also heads for the location of Westmoreland's money. On the road, he meets Franklin, and they continue their next journey together. Alexander Mahon discovers the significance of the money and realizes that all the escapees are converging on Utah. At the same time, Kim, a high-ranking operative for the company, informs Kellerman that he cannot communicate directly with President Reynolds anymore and must report through Kim instead from now on. Back in Rehabilitation Center, Sarah begins to believe that Lincoln Burrows might be innocent after re-evaluating the evidence. For once, she tries to forget Michael, but she still loves her and can't stop herself from thinking about him. On the other hand, Michael, Lincoln, and Teabag arrive at the land, only to find that a residential community has been built on the property where money is buried. After some investigation, Michael determines that the money is buried beneath the foundation of a house owned by a middle-aged woman. The group devises a plan to go into the house of that lady and search for the money. Tweener arrives with the digging equipment, and Michael poses in front of the lady as a contractor from an energy company. He convinces the woman that her power supply needs urgent repairs, which they intentionally disrupted. Luckily, she allows them inside, and the group begins digging under the house. Soon they are joined by Sucre and Franklin. They have also come there to get their share of the money. After some time, Tweener is sent to refuel their vehicle, as Michael doesn't want any difficulty after retrieving the money. But at the fuel station, Tweener is recognized by the authorities. He flees the scene, but is eventually captured by Alexander Mahon. So Mahon takes him to the investigation room of a nearby police station and interrogates him about the whereabouts of the others. Meanwhile, the psychotic Haywire, who was also one of the escapees, wanders the streets aimlessly. He enters an abandoned residence where he becomes captivated by a painting of a country house and decides to take it. In the meantime, Sarah's father, who is now a governor and is going to become the vice president soon, he comes to the house of Sarah to meet her, and there he meets Paul, who is already present there. Paul introduces himself as a friend. At the house where the group is digging, the middle-aged homeowner suddenly expresses her disapproval of Teabag and insists that the group leave her house immediately. During their excavation, they notice a police officer arriving at the house. The officer is revealed to be the woman's daughter, so the group locks both women in a room and continues digging, as now they are very close to their goal. After some time, Lincoln Burrows decides to leave the group after discovering that LJ has been exonerated and will soon be released. However, he doesn't know that this is a trap set by Alex Mahon to lure and capture him. After hours of hard work, the squad eventually uncovers the money. However, Sucre draws a pistol on the group, demanding the entire bag. He takes the whole bag for himself and leaves it alone. Meanwhile, Alexander Mahon appears to strike a deal with Tweener. He promises leniency for Tweener in exchange for leading him to the other escapees. Tweener initially agrees, but he also plays a game with the agent. He visits his girlfriend instead of the escapees and instructs her to wait for him. However, soon, Mahon understands that this is not what was promised, so he takes Tweener away. During their journey back to the police station, Mahon decides to transport Tweener alone. Suddenly, he stops the car on a deserted road and coldly murders the young man. Elsewhere, Haywire begins building a makeshift boat inspired by the painting of the country house. Though he meets some teenagers, but the teenagers gets offended by the cryptic behavior of Haywire and leave him. The following day, Sarah arrives at her father's house only to find him dead in an apparent self-harm act. She is shocked by seeing this and calls the police. There, she retrieves a key that her father had hidden in his last days. In the meantime, Paul blames Kim for the way he handled the governor's death and warns that a similar fate awaits Sarah, too. Back at the excavation site, Sucre takes the entire bag of money and flees without distributing it. However, it is revealed that this was part of Michael Scofield's plan to manipulate the group and gain a larger share. Unfortunately, they soon discover that the bag Sucre took is the wrong one. T-Bag is revealed to have the real bag of money. He leaves the group and begins planning to find Susan Hollander, the woman who alerted the authorities and led to his imprisonment. Apparently, he is still in love with that lady. While heading back towards the city through a forest, Sucre becomes trapped under a wooden log in a river. Michael Scofield tries his best to free him, but fails. The police are also pursuing them, and they can reach their location at any time. Sucre asks Michael to leave him and save his own life. However, Michael still stays there, risking his life for his friend Sucre. Luckily, the dam opens and the water level starts rising. Michael also suggests a plan. He jerks to the wooden log with his motorbike and rescues Sucre just in time. Sucre later learns that Maricruz Delgado has called off her wedding and begins searching for Sucre. Meanwhile, the group uses the remaining money to purchase vehicles and split up. Lincoln successfully locates LJ, and the two manage to escape from the company operatives by faking a fight with some street criminal. Meanwhile, Bellick and Geary deduce that T-Bag has the money and they start to figure out where he is heading. Elsewhere, Sarah narrowly avoids an attack from the company operatives who mistakenly target someone else using a payphone. She reaches out to Bruce Bennett, a colleague of her father, for help, but soon discovers that he betrayed her and is working for the company. At that time, Paul works to decrypt the encrypted texts Sarah received from Michael Scofield. During this time, Michael attempts to retrieve the nitroglycerin vials he had planted before his imprisonment, but he barely escapes after discovering that the FBI is lying in wait for him. He begins to suspect that Mahon is systematically killing every escapee he captures. To learn more about Mahon, Michael contacts his former wife, Pam, while posing as an agent. Michael uncovers that Mahon murdered Oscar Shales, who was a missing serial killer. Also, Mahon buried his body in his yard. After that, Michael confronts Mahon on the phone call and warns him to stay away from him and Lincoln. In exchange, Michael promises not to reveal Mahon's dark secret. However, Mahon refuses the deal, as now he knows exactly where Michael plans to meet Sarah. Meanwhile, Franklin reunites with his friends and together, they stage a daring rescue to free his wife, Case, from FBI custody. He also manages to save his daughter and finally reunites with his family. In the meantime, T-Bag arrives at Susan Hollander's house, only to find that she has put it up for sale and fled with her children. Soon after, Bellick and Geary capture T-Bag and torture him to reveal the location of the money, but T-Bag is very hard to crack. Paul learns that Sarah Tancredi is heading to New Mexico for meeting Michael, so he planned to pursue her. Meanwhile, Lincoln and LJ attempt to evade the police but are eventually apprehended. But their luck works and they get freed by some strangers who apparently are working with the father of Lincoln and Michael. Soon, Sarah reaches her destination and reunites with Michael Scofield, but they are ambushed by Alexander Mahon. Michael drives the car towards an abandoned industrial area. Using quick thinking, he lures Mahon into a trap inside that abandoned factory. While Sarah escapes, Michael has Mahon inside a locked room. Mahon can't shoot at Michael because Michael has leaked propane gas in the factory. Michael asks him to stay away as he is always one step ahead of the authorities and the company for which Mahon is working. At a safe place, Sarah tends to Michael's injuries, reassuring him that his plan to outsmart Mahon worked. She also expresses gratitude for his efforts in ensuring T-Bag faced justice. The scene shifts to Lincoln and LJ, who are now at a safe house with Lincoln's father, Aldo, and his men. There, Lincoln and LJ finally reunited with Aldo Burrows. However, a mole within their group tips off Kim about their location. Elsewhere, Bellick and Geary's torture of T-Bag proves ineffective until T-Bag swallows a key. So, they retrieve the key using laxatives, which leads them to a safety deposit box containing the money. However, greed takes over, and Geary betrays Bellick, attacking him and stealing the bag for himself. On the other hand, Sucre sends a message to Maricruz Delgado, asking her to call him, but she doesn't respond as the police are present there. However, Sucre is determined to meet her, so he sends another message, asking her to meet him in Mexico. Meanwhile, Paul has reached the location where Sarah is present with Michael. There, Sarah leaves a knot for Michael and leaves him. But as soon as she comes out of the safe house, she gets ambushed by Paul. Scene shifts to T-Bag, who is handcuffed in a room, and Geary has already informed the police about T-Bag. So, soon the police are reaching there. T-Bag decides to cut his hand again in order to escape from the scene when he hears the police siren. Michael, who is now alone as Sarah has left him. He is also lacking the necessary funds for his next move. For a short time, he feels a pang of guilt over what he plans to do. Seeking solace, he goes to a church for confession before deciding to carry out his plan. At the safe house, Aldo Burrows reveals that Governor Tancredi had a tape that could prove Lincoln's innocence. However, they are ambushed by the company's mole. But fortunately, Lincoln kills the mole in self-defense. Seeing this, Aldo orders his accomplice to transport LJ to a safe location. Then we see Kim, who reaches the abandoned factory. Here, Michael has trapped Mahon. So he frees Alexander Mahon from there and directs him to Michael Schofield's location again. Michael arrives at his scheduled meeting with smugglers who promise to transport him across the border in exchange for nitroglycerin. However, when they discover that Michael has brought fake nitroglycerin, they plan to kill him. Just in time, Sucre arrives and saves Michael, badly injuring the smugglers' leader in the process. They both then bind the smugglers to chairs and start asking where the plane is. But the smuggler leader's condition is getting worse by the time he is bleeding, so Michael spares the smugglers. In exchange for this good behavior, Michael gets the location of the airfield from smugglers. As Michael and Sucre prepare to leave, Lincoln and Aldo arrive there as planned. Michael is stunned to recognize Aldo as his father. Here we learn that Aldo had left Michael at a very young age, and after that, the life of Michael was miserable. Elsewhere, Bellick sends a threatening note to Geary, warning him about the situation. He actually wants to threaten his disloyal friend so that he return the stolen money. However, Teabag intercepts the situation and kills Geary in order to get back his money bag. Meanwhile, Paul takes Sarah to a motel room and tortures her for the information that she got from her father, but she refuses to give in. Kim is also on the call with Paul, who wants that information. But when Sarah continuously refuses to open her mouth, Kim gets frustrated and orders to kill her. Paul, though hesitant, still has to follow the orders. So he leaves Sarah in the tub full of water while her hands are bound behind the chair. He has left her to die in the water. Back to Michael Schofield, who confesses to Lincoln that his foster father used to abuse him before Aldo Burrows intervened and saved him by killing the abuser. Aldo says that he was a part of the company, and that's why he had to abandon his family, as there were many threats to their lives. There, he also reveals the existence of the tape that could clear Lincoln's name. He assures Michael that they no longer need to run. However, their happiness is short-lived as Alexander Mahon has reached there. As soon as he sees the whole family together, he starts shooting at them. Luckily, the family succeeds in fleeing from that place, but Aldo gets a bullet in the shootout. He takes his last breaths in the car and asks his sons to search for that tape. Michael and Lincoln are very as they met their father after so many years, and just then, they lost him again for always this time. Then, they bury their father and continue the journey. Now, instead of fleeing abroad, they decide to stay and fight for their rights. Their first goal is to find the tape, so Sucre boards the plane alone, leaving the brothers behind. The scene shifts to Bellick, who continues to lie to authorities about his actions. However, now he is caught when the authorities discover the incriminating message he left for Geary. This message leads to his arrest for murder. At the same time, Franklin's wife, Case, realizes she forgot their daughter's medication. So, while attempting to retrieve it from a pharmacy, she is recognized and arrested. On the other hand, Mahon arrives at the airfield too late to stop Sucre's plane from taking off. However, he finds Michael and Lincoln, who are trying to contact Sarah Tancredi again. So Mahon hits his car into the vehicle of the brothers. As he prepares to kill the brothers, the police arrive and arrest them instead. Mahon demands the police that the brothers be transported alone with him, but his request is denied. Meanwhile, Sarah succeeds in setting herself free from the bathtub full of water. She attacks Paul there and jumps from the window to save her life. Soon, Kim learns about Sarah's escape, so Kim dismisses Paul Kellerman for his repeated failures. Paul manages to convince him to grant him one last chance to prove his worth. He devises a plan to kill the brothers during their transport. However, Kim secretly orders Mahon to eliminate Paul once the brothers are dead. Back at Fox River, Bellick is present to spend his punishment tenure there. He has chosen to serve his time there, hoping to receive special treatment among his former colleagues. Instead, he finds that the new warden refuses to grant him any privileges. To his horror, Bellick is sent to Avocado's cell, which is going to make the prison hell for him. The scene shifts to Teabag, who begins dating a postal worker and convinces her to help him locate Susan Hollander. When she uncovers his true identity, Teabag murders her and surprises Hollander at her home. Soon, he traps her and her children inside. He is back to his serious self. He binds Susan and forces the children to follow his orders. He has also blocked the door with wooden logs. He ensures that Hollander and her children cannot escape, cementing his control over them. Meanwhile, Sarah Tancredi is trying to stay under the radar. She changes her hairstyle to avoid recognition. During the prisoner transfer, Michael Schofield and Lincoln Burrows are left alone in the vehicle when they are passing through an underpass. Also, the keys are left in front of them intentionally. Alex Mahon wants to let the brothers use the keys and escape from there. Everything is planned as the door of the nearby escape route is opened, and Alex Mahon is making the police busy somewhere else. So the brothers think about the escape for a bit and then execute their escape plan. Mahon is chasing them, and also, on the other end of the underpass, Paul is waiting with a sniper gun to kill them. So, on both sides, the brothers are in trouble. Soon, they are recaptured by Paul Kellerman and Mahon. Things take a sharp turn here because Kellerman unexpectedly shoots Mahon and offers to help the brothers. He also claims that he has information about Terrence Stedman's location. However, Lincoln is skeptical about Paul as he was the person who framed Lincoln on the false murder charges. So Lincoln tries to kill him, but Paul persuades them by revealing Stedman's whereabouts, who is still alive and living under captivity in a mansion. After that, the trio boards a plane to Montana to confront Stedman. On the other hand, we learn that Mahon is still alive. When he recovers his consciousness, he informs Kim of the situation. This prompts Kim to order Stedman's relocation. However, Michael, Lincoln, and Paul arrive just in time to abduct Stedman from the suited men. Back to Mahon, who is now tired of working for the company, so he tries to quit. However, soon, his child becomes a target of an accident caused by the company. So Mahon is forced to continue working for the company under any conditions. At Fox River, Bellick faces harassment from Banks and other inmates. After a scuffle, Bellick uses the element of surprise to fight back. Later that night, the guards secretly aligned with Banks and opened Bellick's cell, leaving him vulnerable to retaliation. Meanwhile, Paul Kellerman reveals that Terrence Stedman's identity has been completely altered. His sister Caroline, who is now the president, has made him unrecognizable. Despite this, Michael Schofield contacts the press to expose the truth, as his brother's freedom is linked with this truth. However, overwhelmed by guilt and panic, Stedman grabs a pistol and kills himself. Now, the brothers can't prove their innocence. And also, the police have surrounded the hotel where the group is staying. The police force them to come out of the house. Michael quickly devises a plan and comes out under the custody of Paul. After coming out, they take a cameraman hostage and escape from that scene. At Fox River, Bellick is seen badly beaten in the morning. He is also warned to keep his mouth shut, otherwise the consequences could be bad. Meanwhile, Michael and Lincoln record their statements in the camera and leaves the cameraman. Soon, the captured cameraman returns to his network headquarters with the tape, which is aired on the television. In the video, Lincoln Burrows reiterates his innocence, saying that he has been framed in the murder. Then Michael explains the company's operations and the truth about Oscar Shales. Michael also says that Mahon is working for the company. Michael also apologizes to Sarah and announces that Sarah was never involved in anything with him. The broadcast includes coded messages, most of which Mahon deduces as useless, except for one meant for Sarah Tancredi. Mahon is desperate to uncover the plan of Michael, so he enlists Bellick to decode the message in exchange for a transfer to administrative isolation. Elsewhere, Fernando Sucre reaches to another country, and there he shares dinner with an elderly man who, after hearing his story, lends him a car to reach Maricruz Delgado. On the other hand, Sarah contacts the hospital about which Michael has left a secret message for her. There, Michael, Lincoln, and Paul are waiting for her. Soon, Sarah reunites with the trio, but reveals to Michael the horrors Paul inflicted on her in the past. Tensions rise, but Paul redeems himself slightly by revealing that Sarah's key belongs to a secretive club in Chicago, offering it as the next step in their journey. That's why the group boards a train bound for Chicago. Haunted by her trauma, Sarah contemplates assassinating Paul during the journey on the train, but Michael and Lincoln stops her from doing this. We learn that Paul is now in direct contact with President Caroline, who asks to bring the brothers to Chicago. Paul tells her that they are on the train towards Chicago at this time. The police, acting on a tip, block the train's route to capture the fugitives. However, Michael Schofield and Lincoln Burrows force the driver to keep the train moving, narrowly evading the blockade. Meanwhile, law enforcement receives reports of 4 individuals jumping from the moving train. When the police apprehend them, they discover that they are not the fugitives. The real group, Michael, Lincoln, Sarah Tancredi, and Paul Kellerman, sneaks off the train and escapes undetected into Chicago. In the suburbs, Teabag grows increasingly paranoid. When a visitor unexpectedly arrives at Susan Hollander's home, Teabag decides it's no longer safe and plans to relocate her and her children to another city against their will. Meanwhile, Benjamin Franklin and his daughter Dee Dee stop at a cafe. Their moment of peace is interrupted when a mentally ill robber causes a scene. Ben tries to de-escalate the situation calmly, but when things escalate, he subdues the robber and locks him in the bathroom. With the help of bystanders, he and Dee flee before the police arrive, as he is a wanted man, and the police will arrest him. At Fox River, Mahon pressures the warden to honor Brad Bellick Bellic's request for administrative isolation, but the Warden refuses. However, Mahon has connections with the company, and he is desperate for leverage, so he offers Bellic freedom in exchange for doing his dirty work. Bellic, seeing no better option, reluctantly agrees. After that, Mahon tracks down Haywire, who is hiding in an abandoned tower. He is terrified of going back to the Fox River, so he climbs to the edge. Mahon is seeing all this, but he is under Kim's orders to eliminate all escapees. That's why he coldly tells Haywire that he can end it himself or be captured. After a tense moment, Haywire chooses to jump, ending his life. Meanwhile, Paul learns that the woman claiming to be President Caroline Reynolds on the phone call is an imposter planted by Kim. That's why his location was leaked to the police officers. Now he realizes that he's been betrayed by the company. Filled with a renewed sense of purpose, he commits to helping the brothers take down the company. The group arrives at the exclusive Chicago club carrying Sarah's key. Inside, Michael and Sarah locate the room where the tape recording is stored. However, they are discovered by security and forced to flee empty-handed. The failure leaves the group frustrated but more determined than ever to find another way to expose the truth. After that, the group discovers that Pope is a member of the exclusive club tied to Sarah's key, so they reach the house of Pope. There, Michael Schofield appeals to the Pope's sense of justice, saying that his brother is literally innocent and it is the Pope's duty to help an innocent victim avoid a lifetime imprisonment. However, this makes no difference to the Pope's sentiments, and he refuses to help. So Michael persuades him to get the recording, and in return, Michael will turn himself in the prison. So now Pope goes to the club and retrieves the tape from there, but he is ambushed by Kim, who tries to confiscate the tape recording. Seeing this, Michael, Lincoln, and Sarah intervene just in time and save Pope from Kim and his men. But Sarah doesn't open the door for Paul, and they all leave him behind. Pope later confirms to Michael that the recording is authentic and will be helpful for him in saving his brother. He assures Michael that they don't need to surrender to the authorities now to expose the company. Meanwhile, Teabag forces Susan Hollander and her children to his childhood home, a place haunted by memories of abuse from his father. There, Teabag locks Susan and her children in the basement, under his own trauma. Struggling with conflicting emotions, Teabag ultimately decides to let her and her children go, but the experience leaves him shattered. He calls the police and tells them that a mother with her children are captive in an abandoned house. When the police come there to save the trio, Teabag himself has gone far away alone, but still, it looks like he loves Susan much. On the other hand, Benjamin Franklin takes his daughter Dee Dee to a hospital after her condition worsens, but he can't get the proper treatment for his daughter because he is a wanted person. Then he goes to a homeless shelter and tries to bribe the doctor for treating Dee Dee. At first, he refuses to let the doctor use anesthetics, fearing the risk, but her pain compels him to relent. Realizing he can't keep running with her, he strikes a deal with Mahon. The deal is that Franklin will deliver Michael Schofield in exchange for his daughter's freedom and medical care. Elsewhere, Sucre reunites with Maricruz Delgado, though they are being pursued by the security personnel. They come to their native house in the village and start living a new life, knowing that they both are going to become parents soon. Meanwhile, Michael, Lincoln, and Sarah listen to the recording and realize it could prove Lincoln's innocence. Lincoln contacts a lawyer connected to Aldo's group and sets up a meeting with him. To ensure safety, Lincoln checks that the man isn't being followed before leading him to Michael, but he finds that the person is faking his identity and actually is planted by Kim. There are some behind his back and also microphones planted on his body. Sarah also becomes suspicious of the lawyer's identity when she is approached by Bruce Bennett. Bennett convinces her that he isn't working for the company anymore and helps her track down the real lawyer. But before Sarah and Bennett can warn Michael, he uncovers the deception himself and escapes with Lincoln just before the trap is sprung. The lawyer listens to the recording but reveals disappointing news. He says that the recording is good, but its date is not original, so it can't prove that the recording was actually taken after the death of the Stedman. But he also adds that while its contents won't exonerate Lincoln, it could incriminate President Caroline Reynolds. The brothers decide to use it as leverage to blackmail Reynolds into granting a presidential pardon for them. Meanwhile, Teabag creates a new identity by killing a doctor and then boards a flight to Mexico with a bag full of cash. Then we see Sucre and Maricruz visiting his aunt, but their happiness is short-lived as Bellic is pressuring Sans into revealing Sucre's location. Elsewhere, we see Paul, who is now sorry for his own previous work for the president and the company. So he bids an emotional farewell to his sister, as he is going to take a big step in his life now. He resolves to assassinate President Reynolds himself, this time in order to end the company altogether. Meanwhile, Franklin is present in the prison and Alex Mahon is continuously pressuring him to find Michael. Franklin is desperate for help, so he sends multiple messages to Michael Schofield's website, but receives no response. Seeing this, Alex Mahon closes in and orders Franklin to kill himself if he wants a better life for his daughter and wife. The following morning, when Franklin attempts to hang himself in despair, he is rescued by guards. His situation takes a surprising turn when he is interviewed by Agent Wheeler, who works for Internal Affairs and is investigating Mahon's illegal activities. On the other hand, Michael contacts President Reynolds with a message about the recording. Before Reynolds can act, Michael is kidnapped by Kim and his agents, who begin interrogating him. At the same time, Paul quietly leaves the scene and is in a position to kill the president with his sniper gun. As Kim abuses Michael, the president comes there and sends Kim outside. Michael tells the president that he has something against her and will leak it to the media if she doesn't give them a presidential pardon by making an announcement in just an hour. He calls his brother Lincoln and plays the recording over the phone, exposing an incestuous relationship between Reynolds and Stedman. Left with no choice, Reynolds decides to pardon Michael and Lincoln to silence the scandal. Meanwhile, T-Bag, who is now in Mexico, gets into a fight with a bag full of money. He even gets into a fight with the guard while stealing his own bag from the airport. Sucre watches the news and sees T-Bag's location at the airport, so he decides to retrieve the stolen money. However, when Sucre finally goes to get the bag, Bellick apprehends him. He reveals that he knows about the money's true location and has plans of his own. On the other hand, Alex Mahon tracks down Sarah to the motel where she is staying. There, he asks her about the location of Michael, but she doesn't reveal anything. So, instead of apprehending her directly, he allows her to escape as part of his plan. Unknown to her, Agent Lang is following Sarah on the order of Alex Mahon to pinpoint her location. Meanwhile, as President Reynolds prepares for a press conference, Kim approaches her and asks her not to do anything foolish in front of the public. When she doesn't listen to him, Kim threatens her with exposure to her other dark secrets. Under pressure, Reynolds gets in front of the public and abruptly announces her retirement, saying that she has been diagnosed with malignant cancer and can't serve her nation anymore. This announcement has made Michael Schofield's blackmail plan completely useless. With no other options, Michael and Lincoln decide to move forward with their escape. They have no choice but to disappear forever. The brothers board a ship bound for Panama where they plan to regroup and await Sarah. However, Sarah is still being tailed by Agent Lang. She lies to Michael that she has already boarded the ship so that Michael can go safely without worrying about her. She herself gets captured by the FBI. Meanwhile, Internal Affairs Agent Sullins offers Franklin a deal. Franklin has to testify against Alex Mahon in exchange for witness protection for himself and his family. Franklin reluctantly agrees, as he is worried that Mahon will come after his family if he does this, but Agent Sullins assures him that he will be protected in any case. On the other hand, Kim is under growing pressure, so he seeks advice from an elderly superior of the company who agrees to allow Mahon to disappear after completing his mission. He suggests eliminating everyone in the case one by one. T-Bag reaches Panama and goes further out of control. He murders a prostitute who insults Hollander. Then, he narrowly escapes Sucre and Bellick and continues to evade capture. Sucre tries to shake off Bellick, but Bellick reveals that Maricruz is being held captive and won't be freed until he gets his share of the stolen money. Michael Schofield and Lincoln Burrows have also reached Panama. They acquires the yacht Michael purchased before his incarceration. Together with Lincoln, they are about to go far away from this troublesome life. But just before they leave, Michael Schofield receives a message from Sucre on his website, revealing T-Bag's location. But we see that the account is being used by Alex Mahon, and this information is posted by him to trap Michael. But Michael can do anything for his friends, so he leaves Lincoln behind and heads to the motel where T-Bag is staying. There, he reunites with Sucre and Bellick. Now, the trio again agrees to work together to achieve their goals. They start to keep an eye on T-Bag, who is being protected by 2 private bodyguards, but the trio devises a plan to get rid of the bodyguards. After tracking T-Bag to another location, they find a terrible scene, a corpse left behind by T-Bag, who wants to frame the trio in this murder. Soon, the police come there, and T-Bag tries to flee, carrying the money. But during the chaos, Bellick is arrested while the others escape. Sucre and Michael have T-Bag in their custody. Meanwhile, Alex Mahon, who has been tailing Michael, is confronted by Lincoln. He seeks vengeance for their father's death at Mahon's hands. The encounter delays Mahon long enough for Michael and Sucre to make their next move. Elsewhere, Paul tries to commit the unthinkable after his growing failures. He wears his uniform and all the medals he has earned in his lifetime, but when he is about to shoot himself, his pistol jams. Just then, his sister comes there and encourages him to start over, giving him a new perspective on his situation. As T-Bag is being transported to authorities for deportation back to his country, he manages to escape en route to the embassy. He leaves a trail of destruction behind him. As always, Sucre is injured, and the car is destroyed. Michael manages the situation and carries on a chase behind T-Bag. He corners T-Bag into a house and there stabs his hand to the floor before calling the police. He ultimately locks Teabag up and flees with the bag of money. The authorities apprehend Teabag into the prison, but Michael and Sucre manage to flee with the money in hand. Back in court, Sarah faces conviction. She is going to be sentenced to 12 years for aiding Michael in his escape plan, but luckily, Paul comes there and redeems himself by appearing as a surprise witness. He testifies in favor of Sarah clearing her name. He says that he had been working on very heinous crimes on the order of President Caroline. Also, it was he who forced Sarah to help Michael escape. He had the orders to kill Sarah at that time. This proves the innocence of Sarah, and she is set free. Paul, in a last act of redemption, exposes his motives and provides evidence of Lincoln's and Sarah's innocence. Though Sarah's charges are dropped, Kellerman is arrested shortly after. On the other hand, Michael returns to the yacht with the bag of money but can't find Lincoln there. There he receives a call from Mahon, who tells that he has captured Lincoln, as Lincoln is very bad at killing someone, though he had a gun in his hands. Now, Mahon demands that Michael bring the money and the boat in exchange for his brother's life. Michael Schofield agrees to deliver the boat and money to Alex Mahon. However, Mahon is growing desperate. He devises a plan and enlists the help of a local drug cartel to turn the tables on Mahon. On the other hand, Mahon also contacts the police to report a murder, setting off a series of chaotic events. Kim is also informed by Alex Mahon, and he is coming to take down the brothers himself. So Mahon is planning to kill Kim himself and then frame the brothers in the murder. In this way, he will be free from every kind of threat and will live a peaceful life. When Kim and his men arrive, they quickly understand the plan of Mahon by seeing the brothers still alive. So, a violent confrontation erupts between his forces and Mahon. Amid the confusion, the brothers manage to escape while Mahon boards the boat. At the next bank, when Mahon gets off his boat, the police arrive there. They do a routine check and find cocaine hidden on the boat. This leads to Mahon's arrest. Elsewhere, Teabag's connections to the company are revealed too, but his schemes ultimately lead to his capture and imprisonment. The brothers regroup and aboard a yacht Michael had purchased. There they are surprised to see that they have been joined by Sarah, who delivers the good news. Lincoln has been exonerated thanks to Paul's testimony. However, their celebration is cut short when Kim suddenly appears there. He is pointing his gun straight at Lincoln and wants to kill him. Though Lincoln gives him the bag full of money, it doesn't have any value for Kim. He just wants to wipe off all those people who could be a danger to the company. Just when he is about to shoot Lincoln, Sarah shoots Kim, and before they can process the situation, the authorities close in. They all run and try to hide, but there is no way out now. They have to surrender in front of the authorities. In a shocking twist, Michael decides to take the fall for Sarah. He fakes a kidnapping of Sarah to stage her escape. The authorities arrest Michael, though Sarah continuously says that she killed the man and not Michael. After a few days, as the brothers and Sarah part ways, Sarah vanishes before Lincoln can find her. In other developments, Bellick forces Sucre to help him escape captivity, but their plan is intervened as chaos happens there too. Back to Paul, who is being transported into a police van to the prison. Some masked attackers come there and kill Paul, as he already knows that it is going to happen to him, as he has talked about the system so openly. The season ends on a dark note, as Michael and Mahon find themselves imprisoned in Sona, a notorious Panamanian prison. In the final moments, the general in that prison ominously declares that this was exactly what the company had planned all along. The story continues when Michael and Mahon enter the courtyard of Sona prison and immediately witness a violent fight between two inmates. The fight ends with one prisoner being killed, making it clear how brutal and lawless Sona is. At the same time, Lincoln goes to the American consulate and tries to help his brother. A clerk explains to Lincoln the reality of Sona prison. After deadly riots the previous year, all guards abandoned the prison and sealed it off. Since then, the prisoners have created their own system, including leadership, jobs, and an underground economy, completely running the prison themselves. Lincoln presents evidence collected by the Panamanian police, proving that Michael killed Bill Kim in self-defense. This evidence supports Lincoln's argument, and the clerk agrees that Michael should not remain in such a dangerous place. He should be moved to a safer prison until the trial. The next morning, Lincoln meets the American consul, who is actively working to secure Michael's release from Sona. He explains that the case looks strong and that Michael is likely to be cleared of all charges. A transfer out of Sona is expected within 48 hours, giving Lincoln hope that his brother's nightmare will soon end. Back inside Sona, Mahon approaches Michael and proposes that they work together to survive the prison. Michael refuses because he cannot forgive Mahon for killing his father. Later, Michael and Mahon are taken with other new inmates to meet Lechero, the man who controls Sona. Lechero runs the prison through terror and strict rules. He explains that any personal dispute must be settled in a public fight to the death. He also makes it clear that he already knows about Michael's past and does not trust him. Soon after, Teabag arrives at Sona and quickly attempts to gain favor with Lechero. He tries to position himself close to power, showing once again his ability to adapt and manipulate dangerous situations. Another prisoner named Bellic, on the other hand, falls to the very bottom of Sona's hierarchy. He is forced to clean toilets and do humiliating labor alongside another prisoner from Costa Rica. His former authority means nothing here. After a prisoner named Sapo is killed during an escape attempt, Bellic is contacted by a mysterious inmate living in the sewer system beneath the prison. This man asks Bellic to deliver a message in exchange for food, and Bellic agrees, desperate to survive. Later, Michael is accused of stealing drugs from another prisoner. The accusation is secretly arranged by Lechero to test Michael. The prisoner challenges Michael to a death match, leaving Michael with no choice but to accept or face punishment from Lechero's enforcers. As preparations for the fight begin, Bellic secretly places written notes into the pockets of both fighters. Mahon advises Michael to abandon fair play and do whatever it takes to survive. During the fight, Michael uses dirty tactics and gains the upper hand. Even when his opponent is badly injured, Michael refuses to kill him. However, someone secretly gives the defeated prisoner a knife. The man tries to stab Michael from behind, but Mahon steps in and kills him first. Since weapons are forbidden in these fights, Lechero has no option but to spare both Michael and Mahon. When the body is thrown outside the prison, a woman searches the dead man's pockets and discovers the written message, hinting at deeper schemes. Outside the prison, Lincoln searches Panama City for Sarah. His fear grows when the chief of police takes him to a morgue to identify a body, but relief follows when it turns out not to be Sarah. Later, Lincoln receives contact from LJ and goes to meet him at a restaurant. Instead of his son, he encounters a representative of the company. Lincoln then visits Michael at Sona and reveals the horrifying truth. The company has kidnapped both Sarah and LJ. They threaten to kill them unless Michael escapes from Sona and brings another prisoner with him. That prisoner is Whistler, the man living in the sewers of Sona. Michael now faces an impossible task, knowing that failure will cost the lives of the people he loves most. Inside Sona, Michael approaches Bellic and questions him about the note that was secretly placed in his pocket during the fight. After that, Michael enters the sewers of Sona and finally reaches Whistler. Whistler explains that he used to be a fisherman and ended up in prison after killing the mayor of Panama City's son during a bar fight. Because there is a bounty on his head, he hides underground to avoid being murdered by other inmates. At the same time, one of Lechero's trusted men, Sammy, gets into a violent clash with another prisoner, destroying Sona's major water supply. Outside the prison, Lincoln meets Susan B., the mysterious woman connected to the company. She assigns Lincoln the responsibility of giving daily updates on the escape plan. She explains that Whistler's case has drawn political attention, which prevents the company from bribing officials or forcefully removing him from prison. Because of this risk, they rely on Michael and Lincoln to complete the job quietly. Later, Lincoln visits Michael in Sona and receives the note Whistler had written. In Panama City, Sucre buys a gun and ammunition, then travels to Sona to confront Bellic. Sucre threatens him and demands the truth about Maricruz. Under pressure, Bellic admits that he never kidnapped her. After learning the truth, Sucre leaves and plans to return to Chicago. At a bus station, Sucre encounters the police, which convinces him that staying involved will only bring more trouble. He calls Maricruz in Chicago and tells her that he will not come back. After an emotional goodbye, Sucre walks away alone. Back in Sona, Bellic becomes completely powerless. As an untouchable, no one is allowed to give him food, water, or clothes. Weak and desperate, he begs Michael for help, but Michael ignores him. Bellic starts wondering why Michael is so focused on the man hiding in the sewers. Mahon also grows curious about Michael's movements. He gathers information from another prisoner and learns the truth about Whistler. A deal exists between Lechero and the dead mayor's family. Any inmate who kills Whistler will earn a meeting with a judge who will pardon their crime. This bounty turns Whistler into the most hunted man in Sona. After noticing Michael returning from the sewers, Mahon follows him and finds Whistler. Meanwhile, Bellic uses Teabag to arrange a meeting with Lechero. Bellic trades information about Whistler's location in exchange for food and clothing. Acting on this tip, Lechero sends his men into the sewers to capture Whistler. However, Mahon reaches him first and helps him escape while moving back toward the prison yard. Soon Michael spots Bellic wearing fresh clothes and holding food, and he immediately understands that Bellic betrayed Whistler. At the same time, tension spreads across the prison. One outspoken inmate uses the lack of water to turn prisoners against Lechero, pushing Sona closer to full rebellion. Outside, Lincoln studies Whistler's note and realizes it points to a specific bank in Panama. At the bank, he notices Sofia Lugo, Whistler's girlfriend, accessing her boyfriend's safety deposit box. After she leaves, Lincoln confronts her and takes what she removed from the box, which turns out to be a bird guidebook. He gives her a message meant for Whistler and lets her go. The company secretly watches the encounter. Later, when Lincoln meets Susan B. again, she demands the book. Lincoln hands it over, but it is later revealed that he gave her a fake copy. Inside Sona, Michael runs out of options. He attempts to negotiate with Lechero to remove Whistler's bounty, but Lechero refuses to listen after Teabag publicly labels Michael as untrustworthy. With no support left, Michael takes control of the situation himself. He gathers alcohol and plastic bags and creates a simple explosive device. He sneaks into a maintenance area of the prison and plants it inside a blocked pipe. As prisoners grow dangerously thirsty and Mahon prepares to kill Whistler for the reward, the explosive goes off. The blast clears the pipes and restores water flow throughout Sona. The sudden return of water stops the uprising and stabilizes the prison. Grateful for the restored supply, Lechero removes the bounty on Whistler and allows him to rejoin the general population, cutting Mahon off from his chance at freedom. Later, Lechero orders his men to execute the prisoner who challenged his authority by drowning him in a bucket. Later, Whistler thanks Michael for saving his life and asking about the escape plan. Michael has no answer yet, showing that the hardest part is still ahead. After that, Sucre approaches Lincoln asking for money. Lincoln refuses and asks for help finding Sarah and LJ, but Sucre turns him down and walks away. Inside Sona, Michael confronts Lechero and realizes Lechero has no interest in peace or compromise. Lincoln later meets Michael and shows him a new photo of Sarah and LJ. In the picture, Sarah points to the words, Santa Rita. Lincoln explains that Michael refuses to help with Whistler unless he can confirm that Sarah is alive and safe. Susan refuses to allow any contact. Michael then discovers that Sona has only one working phone, and Lechero controls it. On the other hand, Mahoney meets his public defender and learns his trial is set for next year. Even if Michael confesses to framing him, it will not help, because prisoners often take blame for others. Mahon realizes he is completely trapped. Desperate and unstable, he pleads for his medication. The advocate assumes he is only a drug addict and abandons him. With no options left, Mahon turns to addicts inside Sona, searching for anything that will dull the pain. Before he can inject himself, Whistler steps in there and senses Michael's hesitation, forming an uneasy partnership with Mahon to protect himself. Outside the prison, Whistler reunites emotionally with Sophia during visitation. She explains that the book was taken by Lincoln. Whistler pieces everything together and accepts that Lincoln having the book might be necessary. Sophia remains confused and frustrated because Whistler refuses to explain why the book matters. As she signs out, she notices Lincoln's address recorded in the visitor log. Back in Sona, Lechero notices his outside business slowing down. Money is coming in at a weaker rate, and his men begin to doubt his leadership. His cousin insists nothing is wrong on the outside, leading Lechero to suspect that the problem lies within the prison walls. Meanwhile, Sucre tries to sell the gun he recently bought. The shop owner offers only a fraction of its value. Frustrated and defeated, Sucre accepts the deal, buys tequila, and drinks himself into a drunken spiral. Michael turns to blackmail to reach the phone. He threatens Teabag with exposure of his past crimes, forcing Teabag to cooperate. Teabag secretly unplugs Lechero's phone charger, ensuring Lechero must leave the phone unattended later. When the moment arrives, Teabag steals the phone and hands it to Michael, warning him that they have less than half an hour before they are both killed. Lincoln pressures Susan into allowing immediate contact. Sarah communicates carefully, using coded language. She reveals that Santa Rita does not mean the place, but refers to Saint Rita, the patron saint of lost causes. She implies she can see Saint Rita from where she is being held. Michael barely returns the phone to its place before Lechero comes back, but the charger is not fully connected. The missing light alerts Lechero. He redials the last number and reaches Lincoln. Lincoln remains silent and disconnects the call. Lechero orders the number traced. Sophia confronts Lincoln after realizing he is involved in breaking Whistler out of Sona and that he is being blackmailed into it. She feels betrayed, having believed Whistler was innocent and pursuing legal freedom. Lincoln leaves quickly and travels to a St. Rita monument located in a red light district. There, he finds the building where Sarah and LJ are held. He storms inside, but the captors escape with them in a van before he can reach them. Whistler later reveals the truth behind his imprisonment. He once operated a charter boat and took a scientist who collected water samples and measurements. Later, unknown authorities demanded exact details of that trip. When he could not provide them, government agents began investigating him. A bar fight eventually landed him in Sona. The people arranging his escape want him to retrace that boat trip. The book is his logbook, and the only way to locate the site again. Inside Sona, Sammy grows suspicious of Teabag's loyalty and warns him to be careful. Teabag responds by subtly turning Lechero against his own men, planting seeds of doubt. Bellic finally obtains shoes through Stash, the prison's transgender barber. While choosing a pair, he notices Michael meeting privately with Mahon. During the encounter, Mahon pressures Michael into admitting that Whistler must stay alive to escape Sona. Afterward, Michael begins forming a detailed escape plan from Sona. However, Susan calls Lincoln and issues a final warning against further rescue attempts. Nearby, a blood-soaked box sits beside the trash, delivering a clear and terrifying threat. Michael continues forming his escape plan inside Sona. Whistler threatens him, warning that if Michael does not return the book, he will inform the company that Lincoln has it. Michael remains calm and unshaken by the threat. Outside the prison, Michael wins McGrady's cross necklace during a quick bet. McGrady grows suspicious and demands an explanation for why Michael wants it so badly. Lincoln, still traumatized by the bloody box, visits Michael in Sona. Michael asks Lincoln to befriend the prison gravedigger, hinting that the man will be important later. A flashback shows Lincoln opening the box and seeing what looks like Sarah's severed head, leaving him emotionally shattered. Suddenly, the prison loses power. Michael visits Mahon, who is suffering severe drug withdrawal and shaking uncontrollably. Michael brings him into the escape plan and asks him to find a black felt-tip pen. Bellic secretly watches their conversation from a distance. As Mahon deteriorates, he begins hallucinating Haywire, who warns him not to trust Michael. During the blackout, a prisoner attempts to escape. Lechero catches him and brutally slices his Achilles tendon in front of everyone as a warning. At the same time, Sophia visits Whistler and pushes to help with his situation. Whistler allows her to assist by investigating the Schofield brothers' past. Lincoln meets Susan, who demands the real book, and Lincoln hands it over. When Sucre refuses to help further, Lincoln recruits Sophia as a translator so he can communicate with the prison gravedigger. During their visit, the gravedigger recognizes Sophia from the prison gates. Inside Sona, Lechero struggles to restore power and turns to Michael because of his engineering skills. Lechero explains that without electricity, his phone will die, cutting off food supplies and causing chaos. Michael explains that the only way to fix the power is from no man's land, the deadly zone between the prison gates where guards shoot on sight. Michael strikes a deal with Lechero for safe passage into no man's land in exchange for a specific corner cell. Bellic forces his way into the operation, offering to help dig and revealing that he overheard Michael and Mahon. Michael refuses to include him. Angry and desperate, Bellic tells Lechero that Michael is planning an escape and claims he buried something suspicious in a junction box. Lechero confronts Michael and demands proof. Michael shows him that the buried item is only duct tape covering damaged wires. He then leads Lechero to the breaker room to finish the repair. Inside the power room, the fuse box is jammed with McGrady's cross, which is the real cause of the blackout. Michael starts a fight with Sammy, using the chaos to secretly remove the cross. Electricity flows back into Sona. Though still wary, Lechero accepts the explanation for now. Elsewhere, Teabag murders Neves, Lechero's man responsible for smuggling money and drugs, and stages the death as an overdose. Since Neves was already suspected of stealing, Lechero accepts it. Teabag quietly takes Neves's position in Lechero's operation. Lincoln arranges to collect $15,000 from Susan. Sophia insists on coming, but Lincoln refuses to put her in danger. Mahon later delivers the felt-tip pen to Michael. Whistler questions Michael's decision to restore the power, noting that the electric fence is now active. Michael reveals that the escape depends on making the fence as lethal as possible. Susan and Lincoln meet the gravedigger with the bribe money. When the gravedigger demands more, Susan shoots him dead without hesitation. Mahon's hallucinations intensify, urging him to kill Michael. Teabag supplies Mahon with drugs, stabilizing him temporarily. Mahon visits Michael's new cell, which overlooks the electric fence. He confronts Michael about leaving the pen behind in his old cell, and confidently threatens to kill him if he is not included in the escape. Bellic is later invited to watch soccer with Lechero and his inner circle. During the gathering, Lechero orders Teabag to bring coffee. Without warning, Bellic is slammed onto a table and his shirt is ripped away. Lechero accuses him of feeding false information and pours boiling coffee onto Bellic's back, leaving him screaming in agony. Lincoln informs Michael that the gravedigger is dead, but claims they paid off the supervisor to assign Sucre as the new gravedigger, keeping the plan alive. Whistler finally receives his bird book in the mail and approaches Michael to learn the escape details. As Sucre buries Neves, Michael explains that all bodies are sprayed with Keslavol, a chemical that removes the smell of decay. When heated to a certain level, the substance can corrode steel, revealing the next critical step in the escape plan. Lincoln visits Michael inside Sona. The escape deadline is now tomorrow. Lincoln must arrange a getaway vehicle for exactly 3 p.m. The only way to avoid military jeeps is to escape in full daylight, when their movements can be seen and tracked. A new inmate named Andrew Tige notices Michael and Whistler talking. He clearly recognizes one of them. Michael asks McGrady for a watch and a pair of binoculars. He then lays out the escape outline to Whistler, but explains that he first needs to study the guards to uncover weaknesses. Whistler's cell faces a guard tower, so Michael asks him to observe the guard all day. Michael breaks the binoculars in half so Whistler can use one side. Outside the prison, Susan grows restless. She studies blueprints of a large building and marks them with numbered notes, revealing a carefully planned operation in progress. Back in Sona, Lechero's cousin Augusto approaches Sucre. He explains that the former gravedigger used to smuggle items into the prison. Augusto offers Sucre $5,000 to do the same, just once. Sucre reluctantly agrees. Whistler discovers that one guard has a 6-minute blind spot during the day. At the same time, Michael learns the other guard often adjusts his television when the signal flickers. Michael realizes he can build a small transmitter to interfere with the signal. Tige secretly watches Michael work. Michael almost catches him, but Mahon steps in and intimidates Tige into backing off. Lincoln and Sophia attempt to drive off-road but enter a restricted government area. Police stop and harass them. Sophia smooths things over, but one officer makes it clear he will remember Lincoln. Inside Sona, Sister Mary Frances becomes desperate after losing her source of money. Lechero refuses to support her, leaving her broke and vulnerable.
The payment for you anymore. I went to him for payment like every Monday, and he said it's not his responsibility and that I should ask you.
No.
Teabag continues supplying Mahon with drugs. Meanwhile, Sammy retrieves the package Sucre smuggled in. Michael steals a microwave from a dangerous inmate and uses it to finish his jamming device. The device works, but suddenly a guard fires bullets at Michael's cell window. An alarm sounds, and Colonel Escamilla storms into Sona with soldiers. A guard reported spotting a rifle scope, and the soldiers search the prison aggressively. Sister Mary Frances risks discovery, so Teabag hides her and promises protection, showing unexpected attachment. Susan receives a call from General Padman, the real power behind the kidnappings. He addresses her as Gretchen and warns her that failure will not be tolerated. The soldiers find the scope in Michael's cell. Guard Hurtado demands an explanation. Whistler intervenes and takes responsibility, claiming the scope belongs to him. He presents his bird book to support his cover story. The general accepts the explanation and leaves. Lechero later returns to his cell and discovers missing money. Sister Mary Frances attempted to steal $30. Teabag steps in, claiming he gave her the money and planned to replace it. Lechero violently punishes Teabag, but lets the matter go for now. Outside, Lincoln buys diving supplies and heads to the beach with Sophia near the prison. He buries 4 small scuba tanks in the sand. This is the planned escape route for Michael, Whistler, Sophia, and himself. The open sea lies 12 miles away. Trust slowly builds between Lincoln and Sophia. Augusto pays Sucre for the delivery and pressures him to continue smuggling. Sucre hesitates but eventually agrees again. Back in Sona, Michael finds himself locked out of his cell with all his tools trapped inside. The escape plan appears ruined. Mahon notices something important from his own cell. Guard Hurtado is addicted to coffee, revealing a possible weakness. Michael, Mahon, and Whistler encounter Tige again. Tige insists Whistler is not who he claims to be and identifies him as someone involved in a diplomatic incident years earlier. Whistler denies everything and sticks to his fisherman story. Michael and Mahon do not believe him, but Mahon no longer cares about the truth. His only goal now is getting out of Sona alive. Michael confronts Tige about Whistler's identity. Tige admits he once worked at the Ambassador Hotel in Nice, then abruptly shuts down and refuses to explain further. Later, Tige secretly watches Michael, Mahon, and Whistler meet, but he is too far away to hear anything. At her hideout, Susan opens up to LJ about her past. She describes being captured during a mission in Mosul. Hearing American helicopters approaching, she jumped from a window to escape, an act mistaken for an attack. The soldiers sent for her were killed, and she later learned she had been part of a hostage exchange. Over the next 3 days, she was beaten and assaulted, leaving lasting scars. She coldly states another hostage exchange will happen tonight. Mahon grows tired of Tig interfering and warns him to stay out of their business. Lincoln visits Michael inside Sona, where Michael explains Lincoln must slip a substance into guard Hurtado's coffee. The escape is scheduled for 3:13 p.m., only 3 hours away. Michael demands proof that Sarah and LJ are alive and threatens to cancel everything unless he receives a photo by 2:30 p.m. Inside Sona, Teabag struggles to identify the thief within Lechero's crew, with suspicion falling on Sammy. Lechero, whose real name is Norman, demands results and makes it clear failure is not an option. Michael scouts a 2-room cell he plans to use for the escape. The space is controlled by Sammy, Papo, and Cheo. When they arrive, Michael hides there. Cheo smokes a cigar Sammy received in a package smuggled in by Augusto, and then Michael escapes. Outside Sona, Lang visits Mahon and offers him a deal: a transfer out within 48 hours, a reduced sentence and protection in exchange for testimony against the government. She threatens additional murder charges if he refuses. However, Mahon rejects the offer. Chaos erupts when Tig is found murdered, a violation since killing outside Lechero's justice system is forbidden. The body is discovered near McGrady's basketball spot. Under pressure, McGrady admits he saw someone enter a stairwell before hearing an argument, and that person was Whistler. Lechero seizes Whistler and drags him away. Michael doubts Whistler's guilt and suspects Mahon. Whistler pleads innocence and reminds Lechero powerful people want him dead. Lechero reflects on his past. As a child, his mother was assaulted by her wealthy employer, who escaped justice. Young Norman disguised himself as a milkman and killed the man. Whistler explains he is imprisoned for killing a man who hurt the woman he loved. Lechero respects the story and grants Whistler time. Susan gives Lincoln knockout drops for Hurtado's coffee. Lincoln demands a fake photo of Sarah.
What? Say it.
Can you get any more pictures of Sarah?
Alive? No.
Susan agrees and says the exchange is set for 9 p.m. Teabag advises Michael to frame Sammy for Tig's murder, but Michael refuses. He searches Mahon's cell and finds a bloody shiv hidden there. Lincoln nearly drugs Hurtado's coffee, but misses his chance. Sophia creates a distraction while Hurtado recognizes Sophia and pulls them over. He attempts to exploit her, offering prison access for sex. Lincoln intervenes as Susan calls to confirm the photo is ready. Sophia mentions Lechero's name, terrifying Hurtado into leaving. Lincoln tells Susan the guard situation is handled. Susan grows suspicious and ends the call. She prepares to kill LJ but is interrupted when Lincoln explains the time change. Michael confronts Mahon with the shiv, but Mahon is summoned to visitation. Lang and Sullins meet him again, and Mahon agrees to cooperate. Michael brings the shiv to Lechero and accuses Mahon. Lechero dismisses the claim, noting Mahon's recent release and staged evidence. He prepares to execute Whistler, then suddenly stabs Cheo instead. He recognizes the cigar brand Augusto once sent as tribute, and Whistler is released. Sucre sprays Tig's body with chemicals, while a co-worker named Raphael threatens him. Lincoln meets Susan again. She confirms LJ is alive and gives him a real photo of Sarah holding an old newspaper. Lincoln rushes to Michael and admits Susan knows about the time change. He reveals Sarah is dead. Michael walks away in shock as Lincoln begs him to continue for LJ's sake. Michael collapses in grief, then rises, blames Whistler for Sarah's death, and challenges him to fight to the death. Michael and Whistler are forced into a public fight to the death, but Michael privately tells Whistler it's only a distraction. The real escape plan remains active. One guard will be drugged, and they intend to leave when the sun's glare blinds the remaining guard at 3:13 p.m. Outside, Lincoln grows anxious, fearing Whistler may resist and worrying about LJ's safety. Sucre devises a plan to help on the outside. At 2:59 p.m., guard Hurtado drinks the drugged beverage. A minute later, Bellick reflects on Sarah's death, showing rare remorse, but Michael ignores him. By 3:03 p.m., inside Sammy and Papo's cell, Michael uses the noise of prisoners chanting to mask the sound of breaking concrete around the cell window. Whistler panics, suspecting Mahon has betrayed them. Meanwhile, Mahon attempts to expose the company for immunity, but Sullins delays him over Panamanian complications and confines him to a hotel. By 3:10 p.m., the window grate loosens. At 3:12 p.m., Hurtado collapses unconscious. Just as the sun should create a blinding glare, Sammy unexpectedly returns to his cell to collect money. He notices the damaged plaster, but leaves without investigating. Michael climbs out using a hammock turned into a rope ladder and enters no man's land. Suddenly, clouds obscure the sun, the glare disappears, and the escape fails. Michael retreats inside, narrowly avoiding detection. Lachero begins to suspect something is wrong. Michael and Whistler struggle to remove the hammock and reattach the grate, hiding most of it behind a curtain, though a piece remains attached to the window. Lachero arrives, forcing them to continue the fight. The prisoners demand blood, and both men face certain death if they refuse. Whistler resigns himself to the fight, believing only one of them can survive. At 3:25 p.m., Susan brings LJ to the exchange location. Sucre observes from a distance and informs Lincoln that LJ is alive. Susan arrives with only a driver and one bodyguard. Lincoln prepares the scuba gear, but Sophia intervenes, blocking him with a weapon and preventing Whistler's handover. By 3:30 p.m., Susan realizes that if no escape occurs today, LJ will lose value as leverage because everyone involved could die. Inside Sona, Hurtado is revived. At the same moment, the hidden hammock slips from the cell window, immediately spotted by guards. Whistler gains the upper hand over Michael, preparing to kill him, but alarms suddenly blare across the prison. Outside, Lincoln and Sophia hear the alarm, assume the escape failed, and Lincoln hides the scuba gear. He and Sophia unite with a shared goal. Lincoln contacts Susan, claiming both men are with him, arranging a new meeting. Mahon, now clean and formally dressed, realizes Lang and Sullins are manipulating him into confessing to his murders. Lang insists the immunity deal is real, and notes Mahon's addiction. Mahon's withdrawal worsens, his hands shaking violently. Colonel Escamilla and soldiers storm Sona to investigate the escape attempt, announcing the punishment will be death. Papo is shot because the escape originated from his cell. Escamilla publicly dismantles Lachero's authority, exposing how Lachero secretly maintained control to manage order. Teabag fantasizes about taking over as leader. As Escamilla leaves, Lachero and Sammy conclude Michael orchestrated the escape attempt. Outside, Pike informs Susan a headcount confirms no one escaped. Sucre deliberately crashes his car into Susan's van, halting it and giving Lincoln time to arrive. Lincoln overpowers Susan and disarms her. Agent King restrains LJ, creating a tense standoff, but Lincoln persuades Susan to grant more time to secure Whistler. LJ remains alive, but still under her control. As Susan departs, Lincoln notices multiple body bags falling from her van. Back in Sona, Sammy drags Michael to Lachero. Instead of ordering Michael's death, the now stripped of power Lachero grants him permission to escape, with one condition: Lachero must go along. Sullins informs Mahon that Panama agreed to release him, though the hearing is postponed until the next day. Shaking from withdrawal, Mahon demands immediate action, but Sullins contemptuously orders Lang to restrain him. Bellick reflects on his career enforcing the law, concluding Sarah's death proves evil exists beyond prison walls. At the prison gates, Susan secretly meets Whistler, revealing she has been working for him from the start. Whistler originally planned to escape within 7 days, and despite the delay, convinces her the plan can still succeed with more time. Susan reluctantly agrees to extend the deadline for the Schofield brothers. Michael secretly overhears the meeting, gaining insight into the ongoing web of schemes surrounding him. Sammy grows angry as inmates keep uncovering Papo's body. He warns Lachero that the prisoners no longer fear their authority and becomes even more furious that Michael appears untouchable. Lachero tries to restrain Sammy and prevent him from killing Michael, knowing that open violence will only weaken their control. Inside Sona, Michael passes McGrady, who proudly wears new clothes to celebrate his father's upcoming visit. Michael then meets Lincoln, who reassures him that LJ is safe and that they still have 4 days left.
You, me, and LJ, we weren't getting out of there alive. It's the last time I get caught flat-footed.
Michael lashes out, accusing Lincoln of exploiting him the same way the company once did. Outside, Gretchen meets with General Padman. He informs her that the operation must end today and orders a full violent extraction. Gretchen attempts to delay the plan, but he dismisses her concerns. She later meets Whistler at the prison fence and pressures him to be ready for immediate extraction by 5 p.m. Whistler believes the plan will get him killed. Gretchen also instructs Susan to eliminate Michael and begins organizing a fleet of helicopters. Back in Sona, Michael approaches Lachero and asks him to convince the colonel to delay repairing the prison window bars. Lachero admits he no longer holds influence with the guards. Michael hides as Sammy arrives to report that more men are defecting from their group. Sammy proposes recruiting Cristobal, a massive and unstable prisoner, to restore fear. Lachero agrees to meet him, Elsewhere, a man named Tommy Day contacts Sophia, claiming to be Whistler's landlord and requesting her presence due to a broken pipe. Unknown to her, one of Susan's agents listens in. At the same time, Mahon, suffering severe withdrawal, confesses to Lang that he killed Oscar Shales and turned to drugs out of guilt. He pleads for medication, explaining that his testimony is useless in his condition. Before Lang can return, Sullins arrives and forces Mahon to testify. During the hearing, Mahon appears unstable, paranoid, and incoherent, damaging his credibility. Michael confronts Whistler and reminds him that they still have 4 days. He questions Whistler about the woman seen at the gate. Whistler admits she works for the company and reveals he is desperate to escape at any cost. He later expresses regret for his attitude. T-Bag delivers a message from Lechero, including a map of his room and a meeting time of 4 p.m. With only minutes left, Whistler secretly takes a shank as he and Michael head to Lechero's quarters. Inside, they discover a hidden room filled with Lechero's private supplies. As Whistler prepares to attack Michael, Lechero suddenly returns. He enters a code and reveals a deeper secret, an underground tunnel blocked by rubble. The only escape route leads upward into no man's land, but digging without support risks collapse. Sammy nearly catches them, forcing Michael to hide. Whistler pretends to panic from claustrophobia and attempts to leave, but Michael presses him about his true intentions. Lechero returns, refuses Michael's request to use a phone, and quickly sends them away before Sammy comes back. At the apartment, Sophia discovers shredded documents and a passport with Whistler's photo under the name Gary Miller. Susan arrives, threatens Sophia's life, confiscates the papers, and orders her to stay out of the situation. Lincoln and Sucre prepare a distraction. They record gunfire sounds and place a boombox inside a rundown shack to simulate a shootout. Lincoln admits the idea comes from a movie he once watched with LJ. Michael asks McGrady to pass a coded message through his father. After hesitation, McGrady agrees. Alfonso later contacts Lincoln using the code, warning him of danger. Sophia rushes to warn Lincoln as Pike watches them. Susan orders their execution. Lincoln checks his phone and calls a number linked to Lechero, but Sammy answers instead. Suspicious, Sammy disconnects and confronts Lechero, accusing him of working with Michael. Outside, Lincoln and Sucre ambush and kill Pike. Lechero confronts Michael, demands that Lincoln never call again, and hands over his phone. Michael contacts Lincoln and they realize the company plans to extract Whistler directly, leaving everyone else expendable. Moments later, helicopters descend on Sona. Michael finds Whistler on the roof as one helicopter lowers a rope. Guards open fire, hitting the aircraft. Michael grabs Whistler, and both fall back onto the roof as the mission collapses. Soldiers swarm the prison under General Zavala's command. He confronts Michael, blames him for repeated escape attempts, and orders his immediate removal from Sona, leaving Whistler and Lechero behind. Michael is brought to the guard office, where General Zavala questions him about the helicopter escape attempt. Zavala knows Michael didn't pilot the helicopters, but believes he knows the organizer. Michael denies involvement.
With all due respect, General, I had nothing to do with what happened here today.
I always conduct a thorough investigation, and there are too many unanswered questions here.
Zavala responds by placing him in a hotbox in no man's land, a metal cage wrapped in white plastic trapping heat with only small air gaps. Before leaving, Zavala offers Michael a choice: confess and face legal punishment, or remain under the sun and suffer worse consequences. Elsewhere, Sophia admits to Lincoln that she no longer trusts Whistler. A quiet, emotional bond forms between them, interrupted when Susan arrives, abducting Lincoln and ordering Sophia to leave. Susan brings Lincoln to LJ, allowing a brief reunion to keep Lincoln cooperative. Lincoln gives LJ careful instructions to follow during their next encounter. Lang returns Mahon to Sona, saddened by his condition, and gifts him a silver $50 that once belonged to her father for luck. Inside the prison, Whistler assures Mahon he will be included in an escape plan with Lechero. Meanwhile, Bellick provokes Octavio, one of Sammy's new recruits, sparking a fight to the death. Outside, Sucre waits at a bus stop and is confronted by Augusto, who orders him to smuggle another package into Sona, threatening him at gunpoint. Later at work, Zavala instructs a guard to deliver a tiny cup of water to Michael in the hotbox. The guard hesitates, so Sucre volunteers. Michael, close to heat stroke, urges him to quit, but Sucre refuses, showing loyalty over personal safety. Back inside Sona, Lechero struggles to dig upward through a secret tunnel. Its instability requires Michael's engineering skill to prevent collapse. T-Bag secretly watches as Lechero and Whistler sneak out, narrowly avoiding Sammy and his men. Eventually, Michael breaks under Zavala's pressure and admits planning an escape since arriving at Sona. He explains everything without implicating anyone else. Zavala hesitates, but remains uncertain, swayed slightly by Michael pleading on LJ's behalf. T-Bag hints to Whistler Whistler that he has noticed the alliance between Whistler and Lechero and suggests killing Sammy. Cristobal pressures Sammy to eliminate Lechero to seize control. Later, Teabag urges Mahon to challenge Sammy in a fight for drugs, but Mahon refuses, enduring withdrawal instead. Teabag predicts Mahon's choice will lead to death. Sucre confronts Lincoln, explaining he cannot quit Sona because he needs money for his child and Maricruz, implying he will stop helping unless Lincoln aids him financially. Lincoln grows frustrated and walks away. Unaware a company operative overhears the exchange. Zavala, reading news reports about Mahon's testimony, begins to believe Michael's claims about the company. He pressures Michael to reveal Whistler's involvement, promising LJ's protection. Sophia confronts Whistler about a mysterious apartment. He explains the fake IDs are to help them escape together and directs her to a man providing a passport under the name Estelle Linarte. Zavala interrogates Whistler, demanding the escape leader's name. When Whistler resists, Zavala threatens torture. Whistler finally identifies Gretchen Morgan, revealing Susan's true identity. Susan exploits Sucre's anger toward Lincoln, offering $50,000 to stay close and await instructions. Sucre later meets Lincoln and explains their earlier argument was staged to gain Susan's trust. Michael contacts Lincoln to coordinate the next meeting with Gretchen, instructing him to act normally. When Lincoln meets Gretchen, Zavala suddenly arrests her. Lincoln is stunned. Gretchen denies accusations, but Zavala orders torture. She withstands the pain, ultimately admitting she isn't in charge and only responsible for guarding LJ. Michael silently vows revenge for Sarah's death. Bellick prepares for his fight with improvised acetone-soaked knuckle wraps, blocking his nose. Octavio dominates early, but Bellick ultimately wins. Prisoners celebrate, and Teabag realizes Bellick used chemicals to gain the advantage. Meanwhile, Sammy meets Augusto, who pressures him to overthrow Lechero and open the latest smuggled package. Gretchen later leads Zavala to a fake hideout where LJ is supposedly held. When he lowers his guard, she kills him and contacts Lincoln. Soon after, General Mestas replaces Zavala, returning Michael and Whistler to Sona. Lechero is relieved, but Sammy is alerted to the change in power. Sammy again tries to push Lechero into killing Michael. Lechero refuses and explains that Michael has become a symbol in Sona after surviving the hotbox. Killing him would turn the prison against any leader. Sammy unexpectedly agrees with this logic, at least for now. Mahon, slowly recovering from his drug withdrawal, receives a photo of his son Cameron, which steadies him emotionally. McGrady approaches Michael and questions whether he was planning an escape. Michael denies it and walks away. He later joins Whistler, Mahon, Teabag, and Lechero. Teabag announces that he is officially part of the escape plan. Michael, Whistler, and Mahon work inside the escape tunnel. Lechero orders Teabag to collect materials needed to reinforce the tunnel walls. While Lechero is alone, Sammy appears with the intention of killing him. However, memories of their past friendship stop him. Instead, Sammy banishes Lechero from his own room and takes control. He steps onto the terrace, announces himself as the new leader of Sona, and offers a reward of rum to anyone who brings him Michael. Teabag realizes Sammy must be eliminated quickly. He turns his attention to Bellick, who is boasting about winning a recent fight. Teabag pressures Bellick into killing Sammy the same way he killed before, by using acetone on his hand wraps. In return, Bellick will be included in the escape. Meanwhile, Michael, Mahon, and Whistler struggle to build proper tunnel support with limited materials. Whistler admits that he was ordered to kill Michael. He reveals that the company threatened his family to force his cooperation. Outside the prison, Sophia demands that Lincoln promise not to betray Whistler. At the same time, Sucre meets Susan, who is sending a coded email under a fake name. She hands Sucre a cashier's check for $25,000, claiming she trusts Lincoln. Bellick publicly challenges Sammy to a fight. Just before it begins, Bellick realizes the acetone is gone, leaving him terrified. Back in the tunnel, Whistler opens up more about his past. He explains that while he once worked as a fisherman, Susan recruited him into something far bigger. Mahon remains suspicious and focused only on the escape. Whistler shows Michael his notebook, which includes strange terms like gate and stampede, brushing them off as harmless references. Lincoln buys a bomb from the black market as a last resort backup. He gives it to Sucre and instructs him to arrange a meeting with Susan so he can get close to her vehicle. Michael, Whistler, and Mahon decide they must leave the tunnel to gather more supplies. As they exit Lechero's room, Sammy's men spot them and chase them. The three rush back, but Whistler gets caught outside. At the same time, the fight between Bellick and Sammy turns brutal. Bellick lands the first hit, but Sammy quickly dominates. Sammy is alerted that Michael has been found and abandons the fight. He storms to Lechero's room and demands the door combination. Whistler insists he does not know it. Sammy threatens Whistler's life to force Michael to open the door. Mahon restrains Michael, but Michael insists Whistler is essential to the plan. Sucre meets Susan in her car. She reveals she knew the argument between Sucre and Lincoln was fake. She also explains the check she gave him was traceable, allowing her to locate Maricruz. She threatens to kill Maricruz if Sucre does not deliver real information. Susan throws him out of the car, unaware that Sucre manages to plant the bomb underneath her seat. Back in Sona, Sammy drags Lechero toward the old room. Mahon prepares a weapon from rebar. Sammy demands the door code again. Michael pretends to cooperate and offers to include Sammy in the escape. Sammy enters the tunnel to inspect it. Suddenly, the tunnel collapses as sand pours in, burying and killing Sammy almost instantly. His men freeze in shock, giving Mahon and Lechero the chance to kill them. Lechero throws the bodies, including Sammy's, into the yard to reassert control. Bellick secures his place in the escape by threatening to expose it otherwise. Lincoln leaves Sophia with a small bag containing an Eiffel Tower keychain. Whistler confronts Michael, blaming him for the unstable tunnel. It becomes clear that Michael intentionally removed a support, knowingly causing Sammy's death. This is the first time Michael deliberately causes someone to die. McGrady later offers all his saved money to join the escape. Michael refuses, believing McGrady deserves a chance at a better life. Sophia searches Whistler's old home and discovers a heavy, locked silver case. During visitation, Lincoln reveals that the fake passport Whistler used belongs to a real man from Scottsdale, Arizona, the same city connected to Whistler's past. Michael begins to question who Whistler truly is. Michael gives the team 24 hours to redig the tunnel, even though it took 3 days before. He still doesn't know how they'll avoid the guards, which frustrates everyone. Teabag reminds the others that Michael betrayed them during the last escape. As the tunnel work continues, Bellick offers to handle outside security for Lechero. Rain begins to fall, causing water to drip into the tunnel, and a sinkhole starts forming. The ground won't hold until the next day, forcing them to leave immediately, tonight. Lincoln and Sophia arrive at the Sona visitation fence. Michael asks Lincoln to help plan how to bypass the guards and admits he feels uneasy about aiding prisoners and turning over Whistler. McGrady confronts Michael about being left behind, and Michael justifies it as doing him a favor. Michael plans to cut the power, but the backup generator complicates things. He contacts Lincoln to relay the change and instructs him to reach Sucre, who is meeting Susan. Sucre tries to lie, but Susan sees through him. She has discovered a bomb he left in her car and threatens Maricruz and Sucre's unborn child. Sucre admits that Michael doubts handing Whistler over. Lincoln informs Susan that the escape has been moved up to tonight. Once Sucre leaves, Susan checks on a surveillance agent watching Sophia's apartment. He cannot get a clear view, raising her suspicions. Sophia tries to open Whistler's silver case, but eventually hides it under her bed. The digging faces another problem when a food delivery truck nearly drives into the sinkhole, but gets stuck in the mud. Meanwhile, a gloved figure abducts Sophia. The escape team works on securing the tunnel for departure. Bellick suggests to Mahon that they team up afterward to capture the others and bring them to justice. Mahon warns him that partnership will only lead to getting caught. Sucre finds the generator's model number and informs Michael, sharing a plan to bypass the Jeep patrol, though Michael admits it's a gamble. Lincoln meets Susan and finds Sophia safe, while Michael calls the generator company to ask about lag time. Lincoln contacts Susan to request Whistler. Susan tortures Sophia with a lit cigarette, demanding coordinates by day's end. Whistler agonizes, knowing LJ is at risk if he complies. In the tunnel, Teabag suggests teaming with Mahon to kill Whistler and betray Michael. Lincoln treats Sophia's wounds and accuses Susan of being desperate. Susan insists the company's actions, though extreme, are for the right reasons. Whistler eventually deciphers the coordinates and tells Michael he is willing to give them. But Michael warns it would undo all their work. Sucre sabotages the Jeeps, but is confronted by his boss, Rafael, who pulls a gun after discovering Sucre's true identity as Jorge Rivera, wanted by the authorities. At visitation, Whistler and Michael meet Susan, Lincoln, and Sophia. Whistler admits that the chaos stems from his charter job for the company. He destroys the coordinates, stating he will only give them when Sophia, LJ, Michael, and Lincoln are safe. Susan agrees, but sets a strict deadline and leaves, taking Sophia. Michael tells Lincoln to cut the power from outside the building at 5:15 a.m. He realizes that if Sophia is held until the exchange, someone must pick them up. Michael talks to McGrady about escape risks. McGrady still wants to join, but Michael warns he cannot be responsible. He returns to the tunnel, fully braced. Time is tight, and and they must act as soon as the power is cut. The others are shocked by the short window. Teabag and Lechero interpret it as proof they cannot trust Michael. Teabag threatens Whistler with a knife, forcing Michael to let Teabag, Lechero, and Bellick go first, or Whistler dies. Mahon stays at the rear, having learned not to trust Michael blindly. Lincoln cannot access the junction box, so he steals a bus and crashes it into a utility pole. The lights go out. Michael counts down the 30 seconds of power lag before the backup generator activates, signaling the start of the escape. The team races through the tunnel, facing guards, treacherous ground, and rising tensions. Whistler's decision to protect everyone, combined with Michael's planning, makes the escape a high-stakes operation. Split-second timing, quick thinking, and fragile trust drive the mission forward. Every move counts as the team navigates danger, betrayal, and the unknown. The escape pushes everyone to their limits, with loyalty, courage, and survival hanging in the balance. Lechero, Teabag, and Bellick dash for the exit, while Michael holds Whistler, Mahon, and McGrady back. The lights come back on after just 15 seconds, revealing this was all part of Michael's plan. Lechero still attempts to escape, but is shot in the belly. The trio is forced to reveal the tunnel to Generals Sojo and Mestas. Michael leads Whistler, Mahon, and McGrady into no man's land and toward freedom, though soldiers soon pursue them. Lincoln tries to contact Sucre without success. After hanging up, he receives a call from a nervous Alfonso Gallego, McGrady's father, who will drive the getaway car. As the escapees run, Whistler tears his ankle, but they all manage to reach the beach. Lincoln digs up the scuba gear, while Whistler warns that the company will not allow the exchange, putting everyone at risk. He suggests contacting them to arrange a trade, but Lincoln does not trust him. They prepare to dive. McGrady fears swimming, so Michael instructs the others to share oxygen and support him. Susan calls to confirm they will meet in Panama in 20 minutes. Whistler realizes he has lost the bird book, but there is no time to recover it. The group dives into the water just as soldiers reach the beach. Back in Sona, Bellick, Lechero, and Teabag face brutal beatings from Menjivar, while guards attempt to extract Michael's location. Meanwhile, the escapees swim toward a weather buoy, but Sucre is missing. He is still handcuffed in the general's office, leaving them stranded in open water. Alfonso discovers that the boat Sucre reserved is still docked. Sojo realizes the escapees' likely route and alerts the Coast Guard. Susan, with LJ and Sophia tied up, grows impatient. McGrady begins cramping in the water. A boat finally approaches. It is Alfonso, coming to rescue them. He brings them safely back to land, where Link's car awaits with changes of clothes. Alfonso and McGrady reunite and leave together, while the others drive off. As Teabag is led to the general's office, he spots Whistler's bird book under a truck in no man's land. He pretends to stumble to secretly pocket it. Susan tracks the escapees using a device hidden in the stopwatch she gave Whistler. Realizing they are being followed, the team throws the device overboard and hides in the reinforced shack Link previously rented. Bullets fly outside, but the escapees remain safe inside. Susan arrives at the shack to find it empty except for a recording of gunfire. Meanwhile, the escapees continue miles away in Link's car. Whistler pleads not to be turned over, warning of danger, but Michael and Lincoln ignore him. In Sona, General Mestas orders Raphael to release Sucre, who is not wanted for murder. Teabag is taken in to be tortured for Michael's location. Despite claiming ignorance, he gives up Sucre's identity. Sucre denies involvement, but the general soon discovers that he is one of the Fox River 8. The escapees reach an abandoned warehouse, where Lincoln plans to control the exchange.
Hey, little help.
What is this place?
Where are we gonna make the exchange? On our terms. There's a service right out back, just in case we want to get lost.
Yeah, assuming he's still alive.
He calls Susan to instruct her to meet him there with LJ in 20 minutes. Meanwhile, Alfonso and McGrady become trapped behind a checkpoint. Their car is likely to be searched, and McGrady could be arrested, leaving them in a dangerous predicament. Inside the warehouse, Mahon attempts to leave, but Lincoln, seeking revenge, draws a gun on him. Mahon explains that his actions were dictated by the threat to Link's family. Just as Lincoln is about to fire, Whistler uses the distraction to break free, smashing a window and escaping. Mahon follows the chaos to slip away as well. Whistler's injured ankle is revealed to have been a ruse. He steals a truck and speeds off, leaving Lincoln and Michael behind with no Whistler to exchange. Susan is on her way, and the escapees must figure out their next move. The situation becomes critical as time runs out and enemies close in. Michael and Lincoln are forced to make split-second decisions while evading the company. The stakes are higher than ever with Whistler gone, Susan approaching, and Sucre trapped in Sona. Every choice could determine who survives and who is captured. The escape, meant to be a clean swap, turns into a high-tension chase across land and sea. As the group navigates treacherous waters and checkpoints, trust, timing, and resourcefulness are tested. Michael's planning and quick thinking remain crucial, but unexpected twists, like Whistler's sudden escape and the company's relentless pursuit, keep everyone on edge. The team must adapt constantly, facing danger, betrayal, and uncertainty at every turn. Their survival depends on courage, cunning, and the ability to act under pressure, leaving viewers on the edge of their seats. Michael and Lincoln chase Whistler through the streets of Panama. Whistler tries to escape by calling Gretchen for a pickup, but Lincoln catches and subdues him. Michael contacts Gretchen to arrange the exchange. Back in Sona, Sucre suffers for the escape. He is brutally beaten and forced to dig his own grave, lying in it as guards begin to bury him alive. The general stops the execution just as the dirt reaches his head. Michael calls Sucre's cell, and Sucre proves his loyalty by refusing to trick Michael over the phone. This act of defiance results in his continued imprisonment in Sona. Michael arranges a public meeting spot for the exchange, and Gretchen attempts to convince him to join the company, impressed by his ingenuity as the first person to escape Sona. Michael declines and reveals that the stunt is only to ensure that LJ and Sophia are safe and that Whistler is in custody. They leave quickly and set up another exchange point in a public museum. Gretchen must pass through metal detectors, leaving her weapons behind. LJ notices something funny, realizing Michael has outsmarted them. The exchange proceeds, but Sophia soon discovers it is a ruse when Gretchen admits there are no coordinates. Upset, Sophia attempts to leave Whistler, but Michael triggers the museum alarms, knowing the company would guard all exits. Everyone walks out amidst the chaos. At the exit, guards grow suspicious when they find an arrow tip in James's pocket, planted earlier by Michael. Gretchen's men attempt to react violently, leading to commotion in which Sophia is shot. Michael rushes to the car to retrieve a gun, prepared to confront Gretchen, but hesitates when distracted by a guard shooting at her van. Lincoln wants to help Sophia, but LJ insists he leave and promises to take care of her. Meanwhile, McGrady and his father are stopped by police 200 kilometers west of the Colombian border. The officer becomes suspicious of the father's behavior and searches the truck, finding only fertilizer. McGrady avoids capture by hiding in a secret compartment behind his seat. They eventually reach home, where McGrady is shocked to see his family waiting for him in Colombia. Back in Sona, Lechero is dying, and the prison falls into chaos. Teabag convinces Bellic to help save Lechero from the mob, but he manipulates the situation for his own gain, falsely claiming a guard will allow their escape if $50,000 is delivered. Once the money is arranged, Lechero learns the truth and, already dying, instructs Teabag to kill him quickly with a pillow. Teabag complies. Sister Frances brings the money and reminds Teabag of her loyalty after he protected her earlier. Teabag publicly denounces Lechero's rule and distributes some money to inmates to gain trust, keeping the rest in Sister Frances's care. Sucre is thrown back into Sona just in time to witness inmates cheering for Teabag. Mahon sits in a bar across from a bank, drinking club soda and observing the clock while claiming to be between jobs, hoping for opportunity. Whistler enters and gives Mahon $100 to pay the bartender and ensure privacy. Mahon is impressed, and Whistler explains that Susan manages the money. Mahon warns that Gretchen is the weak link and Michael will hunt them if she betrays anyone. Whistler ignores the warning and asks Mahon to join the company. Despite the danger, Mahon agrees, and they leave the bar together. Michael and Lincoln wait outside the hospital for Sophia. LJ gives Michael the origami flower Sarah had before she died, reminding them of her memory in a flashback. LJ reveals that Sophia had information about Whistler in a briefcase at her apartment. Lincoln downplays it, but Michael's desire for revenge is fueled. Michael and Lincoln break into Sophia's apartment, discovering information on Jason Leaf, connected to Whistler. Afterward, Michael and Lincoln part ways. Lincoln stays with Sophia in the hospital, while Michael sets out to pursue Gretchen. The story ends with Michael driving along a Panamanian highway, the origami rose and Lincoln's gun beside him, focused on revenge against Gretchen for Sarah's death.